But somehow it's all gone now. Good things can never last. You are down for the third time, and you spent your change. Memories of your prime make life seem so strange. Left your mark in a distant past. But somehow it's all gone now. Good things can never last. You are down for the third time, and you spent your change. Memories of your prime make life seem so strange.
And that movie was grooving, man. And we got the outer space background and everything. Yeah, man, we going places, baby.
Thank you for riding on the train of outer space funk. Now, welcome to the State of Now Entertainment, and here is yours truly, the host, Mr. Sigma Jones.
Yeah, that was awesome.
All right. Welcome again to another State of Male Entertainment, where we got all of the main cast here, so you know it's going to be a great one tonight. So, first and foremost, just want to give a shout out to the subscribers out there. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate the love and support. Well, hope you all are doing well this evening or this morning, depending on where you are around the world. So, let me go ahead and introduce the main cast here. First and foremost, I got to start off with the main man who is pretty much here on time every time, and that is Mr. Lawrence Guy. All right. Good, sir. Mr. Lawrence, how's it going?
What's good? We in the house one more again. And we about to tear it up, tear it down, wrap it around, play some smooth music. Can you dig it?
Man, I love that energy. All right. Next up, we have Mr. Aizen Saba.
All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. To avoid that responsibility, those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born.
Mr. Isaac Sama, how's it going, sir?
Oh man, it's going wonderful. Well, almost wonderful. I will say, I'm kind of perturbed that my elder brother is in my spot, but it's fine. I'll accept it.
What? Hey, look, man, looky here. You know what? I'm gonna come back to that later because the next person coming up, I got words for him.
Oh,
But no, it's good. Enjoying the opening music there, and hey, we're ready to have a great conversation with this as always.
awesome, awesome. And then next up is our good sir, Mr. Logic's Finest.
I'm so disappointed, Ichigo. So very disappointed. Sadly, your sword exhibits only fear. When you counter, it's because you fear being killed. When you attack, you fear killing. And when you try to protect someone, you fear you could let them die. The only thing that your sword speaks of is senseless fright. And that's not good. What you do not need in battle is fear. Nothing will come of it. You counter, you don't let them cut you. If you protect someone, you don't let them die. When you attack, you kill.
All right. Mr. Logic Finest, how's it going, sir?
Well, I have to say, I'm not doing well. I have to let the cat out of the bag. Lawrence Guy hopped on a plane. He jumped across the pond. He flew all the way to Germany to beat me like a runaway slave to make sure I was on time. So I was on time early today for this show.
and I still didn't get no German chocolate cake.
I'm loving this. I am really loving this. We are coming out firing today. All right. And then last but not least, Truism, that intro of yours.
What you gonna do? 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 What you gonna do?
Mr. A Truism, how's it going, sir?
Yo, man. Did I get muted? Oh, hold on.
Oh, you open that.
Okay. Yeah, man, I'm doing good, bro, man. It was.
This
I love that intro, man. I love that intro, man. I do.
This one. This is the one I was talking about.
Me?
He gonna come up on the channel. He gonna start talking right out the gate. Don't greet nobody, and then all of a sudden we gonna jump straight in the show. Yo, man, you won't be talking to me like
that. my bad, brothers. I do apologize. Come on, you know I have nothing but the greatest amount of esteem and respect for all of you brothers. Like, you guys have done things that I wish I myself would do, man. You know I got respect for Lawrence.
No, bro. We need money.
Dang.
No, go.
Yeah, Lord, we are coming in hot.
But you know, go man, go man inside, go man inside.
Lawrence, I gotta say, I think to your comment about we need money, I think the look on the face of his avatar, I think says it all. But
Oh man.
Man, Isaac, man, when you told me that dog, when the first time I saw that video, I had that song going through my head for like a good week and a half, man.
oh man, it's still going in my head. And when I showed it to to the guys at work, man, they were dying laughing.
That song is life, man. I'm telling
Man,
you.
it's awesome. It's awesome.
But I'm glad to be back on here again with you, brother. I learned so much when I listened to you guys speak, especially Logic's finest in regards with the narrative and the construction of such. It's like a master class on how to actually go about making a story. So, yeah, I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. All right. Well, now that we got the house call finished up, we're gonna kick this off on a very high note. So shout out to Isaac Sama because he sent us an article that I have to say I think is something that kind of highlights why something like the state of male entertainment is needed. Because this particular article is something where I think it goes into why, like you said, altruism, the narrative in today's world of entertainment is simply, it can simply be better. So the article he sent over is from Variety. The title says Watchmen creator Alan Moore states adults loving superhero movies is infantile and can be a precursor to fascism.
Oh,
Very,
here we
very,
go.
very interesting. So let's kind of delve into it a little bit. It's a short article, but I think we'll get the picture of what's going on. So it says Watchmen creator Alan Moore's hatred for superhero movies is well known, as he once called them a quote blight to cinema and quote also to culture to a degree. But he dragged them even more during a recent interview with The Guardian. Moore describes adults' continued love of superhero movies as infantilization that can act as a precursor to fascism. He said, quote, I said around about 2011 that I thought that it has serious and worrying implications for the future if millions of adults were queuing up to see Batman movies. Because that kind of infantilization, that urge towards simpler times, simpler realities, that can be very often be a precursor to fascism. Moore expressed worry with the notion that hundreds of thousands of adults are now lining up to see characters and situations that have been created to entertain the 12-year-old boys, and it was always boys, of 50 years ago. He said, quote, I didn't really think that superheroes were adult fare. I think that this was a misunderstanding born of what happened in the 1980s, to which I must put my hand up to a considerable share of the blame, though it was not intentional. When things like Watchmen were first appearing, there were an awful lot of headlines saying, comics have grown up. Moore continued, I tend to think that no, comics hadn't grown up. There were a few titles that were more adult than people were used to. But the majority of comic titles were pretty much the same as they've ever been. It wasn't comics growing up. I think it was more comics meeting the emotional age of the audience coming the other way. I will always love and adore the comics medium, but the comics industry and all the stuff attached to it just became unbearable. In an October 2020 interview, Moore revealed that he had not seen a superhero movie since Tim Burton's original Batman in 1989. He added, quote, I don't watch any of them. All of these characters have been stolen from their original creators. All of them. If you try to make them for the adult world, then I think it becomes kind of grotesque. All right, gentlemen. So there is the article, and we're going to go ahead and start firing shots while I get our jazz music in order behind the scenes. So, first and foremost, Eisen, since you brought this article, we'll start off with you.
Well, all right, thank you. One of the first things that I think about is, him admitting to, him playing his part in everything, in the whole genre. The other thing is that him being a creator for, Watchmen, and then having the audacity to say that the Watchmen is to entertain 12-year-old boys. I mean, that to act like that's not a bit much for some 12-year-old boys, I think it's a load of crap. But the other thing that I take away from this is that whenever you really look at it, he talked about comics and basically anything. I mean, he didn't say it specifically, but he did say comics. But anything along the lines of that, anime, all of that can be considered in with that line of genre, that it's only for boys. And the other thing that I took away from it was, well, if they're supposed to grow out of it, what other content do you have for them to watch? Because honestly, if you look at what's coming out now, the comics of then were actually, the storylines were actually more complex than anything they're doing now. And I would argue that the content you've got coming out now is more fascist than what was created back then. But I give the mic up to somebody else.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it is now a free flow, so feel free to jump right in.
I find it interesting that he's trying to make a correlation between someone enjoying, as an adult, material that they enjoyed when they were in their younger years to fascism. Not even Clark Kent Kal-El can even make that kind of a leap in logic. So I'm trying to figure out how he was able. Well, I mean, of course I know how he did it, because he wants a virtue signal, yada yada yada, this type of thing. But I would have loved to actually hear further, I guess, go down the further rabbit hole of how he was able to make that kind of correlation. I know why he did it, but I want to hear the reason that would back that up, that kind of assumption. That's what I'm interested in. But I mean, I'll yield the mic.
Well, all right, Lawrence, you or me?
I was gonna let you go first. I have a lot to unpack on that, so I'll let you go first.
I reached out to me and we had a small conversation about this. My views are somewhat different. I do not think, just personally, I don't think that Alan Moore is bending the knee to the woke mob. First off and foremost, I think that a lot of people were caught up on the Watchmen, saying that he's showing that superheroes can be bad and that be careful. But look, if you take a closer dive, that's only some of what Alan Moore was. He was who watched. So
you're breaking up a bit, bro. You're breaking up.
Yeah,
bro.
Logic, your mic is going in and out.
Hold on.
Okay, I was wondering if it was just me.
Bluetooth, 1 second.
Yeah, you're breaking up, and he sounded low, like he was muddled.
How do I sound now?
Oh,
Oh,
much
you're doing
better.
great.
Much better,
Yeah,
much
much
better.
better.
Much
Okay,
better.
yeah,
Yeah.
Clear as a bell, bro.
that was my concern about my Bluetooth headphones. But the biggest takeaway about the Watchmen, what Alan Moore was saying was, don't deify our heroes because they have the same evils, perversions, and depravity as the rest of us. And if we're not careful, they will rule us with an iron fist or worse. And if you look at current society, he was proven correct. That's what he was saying when he wrote The Watchmen. Now, with all of that said, you have to look at Alan Moore specifically as a whole. He's always been a strange duck. So I think that he is not, I don't want to use that term, a crazy old man, because he's not. He's very eccentric. So I think he's taking bits and pieces of the current situation, the current zeitgeist of global society as a whole, and is taking some, I'd say, incorrect leaps and assumptions. So you have to look at it from the viewpoint that he's off in his assessment because a lot of what he was saying with the Watchmen has come to pass. So for that reason, I disagree with my good friend Eisen. I don't see him as bending the knee to the woke mob. I can see how one can make that assumption. But when you look at him specifically, in aggregate, he's off on his assessments because he's partially right, but then he's also just a bit out there himself.
All
Yeah.
right. All right.
Free Zone said the music is loud too.
Yeah. We turned it down, so should
Oh,
be
okay.
clear.
All right. Okay. Cool. I'm sorry, Logic. Are you done?
Yeah. I am.
Okay. All right. For me, there's a lot to unpack with Alan Moore. First of all, him raising his hand to say he played a part is ridiculous. He didn't play a part. He built the foundation. It was him and it was Frank Miller simultaneously the same year, 1986.
Yes,
Frank
sir.
Miller went dark with The Dark Knight Returns, and Alan Moore did his take on what he considered fascism in England at the time with The Watchmen. And mind you, that it wasn't just The Watchmen. He did V for Vendetta, and before both of those, he had already been subtly adding that into his Swamp Thing run prior. And for him to sit there and talk about the concept of kids and comics and what they're supposed to mean for aging up and stuff like that. This is the guy who made his bones on turning Miracle Man into one of the darkest stories ever told in superhero comics history. Miracle Man or Marvel Man, depending on what side of the ocean you're on. Um, so it's ridiculous. Looking at it from the perspective of someone who, because he included movies in this, right? So this is coming from the guy who's vexed and upset because all his opportunities to make the kind of money that the MCU did with those stories always failed with him. Watchmen didn't make the money he expected it to. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen didn't make the money, and not only that, but his rights were stolen from him. To me, he sounds like a bitter old man. He sounds like a bitter old man because you can't lay the foundation for all this and then come back 20, 30, 40 years later because you didn't get your cut and now you're upset about it. And going to what Eisen said about 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 the way people are writing comics today, that this very well is his fault because like I said, he set the foundation in every series he wrote, putting his personal, political, religious views in those stories, which leads to the point of everybody doing their own particular ideolo- ide- ideologies today. So he can't be removed from that. He just can't because, like I said, he didn't take part in it. He's the foundation of it. If anything, of what I said wasn't rambling. So
That's an interesting. I didn't think about that. Both of you. that idea didn't come up in my mind. I thought it was just he was just bound in need to the woke, but I never thought about him actually because now I guess his glory day has passed and he hasn't gotten, I guess, maybe the kind of accolades, praise, pay, etc. that this might actually be somewhat of the ramblings of an angry, bitter old man. I never knew that.
Well, yeah, not to put too fine of a point, not excuse me, not to put too fine of a point on it, but the entire world of comics and superhero movies, all of it from Batman 1989 forward, all of it rests squarely on the shoulders of Frank Miller with The Dark Knight Returns and Alan Moore with The Watchmen. They were the first dark 30 years 20 years before Christopher Nolan, it was those two gentlemen. So, you know, I think that, you know, um, I think that, that's why I said I can't call him a crazy old man, but I feel comfortable with what Lawrence said. He sounds like a somewhat bitter old man, combined with a lot of what he was saying in The Watchmen has come to pass. So when you combine that with he hasn't had any of the financial opportunities because at the end of the day, everybody wants to make money, and then we have this woke mob culture. Now we have politicians and athletes and entertainers are all deified. But where is his role in this? See, like I know who he is. Lawrence Guy knows who he is. You know, those of us who are hardcore comic fans, we know who he is. Does the average person know who he is? No. The average person knows who Zack Snyder is, but they don't know who Alan Moore is. So that's why I said when I take him in aggregate, I don't see him as bending the knee to the woke mob. I see him as making some unfortunate, largely mistaken, somewhat, largely mistaken comments. And it's to me, it's unfortunate coming from him of all people. But um, I don't think it's woke, but I do think that he's wrong. He's off the mark.
No, no, I'm with you on that. I don't think he's pandering to the woke crowd either. I don't. But the point I was trying to make is that even though I don't believe he's pandering to them, it cannot be denied he's the cause of them, or at the very least one, or at the
And
very least one of them.
I
He's
don't,
I,
one
I
of the
don't,
causes
I
at the
don't know
very
if
least.
I don't know if I can cross that particular bridge with you. What I will
Mhm.
say is, I will say he laid some of the bricks for the path that the woke mob walks, but I can't give him credit for them.
He built the
If
house, man.
if I'm making sense. Oh, he don't.
You're trying to
I
say he
mean,
made the yellow brick road of wokeness?
well, no, no,
Um,
no. I'm not trying to say that. I'm because, like I said, that would have happened
he's a
regardless.
part of the wokeness.
Right, right. So,
He's with
that,
it.
yeah, that house has to be built. And like I said, whether he likes it or not, he is the foundation of that house. While Frank Miller might be the walls, and then you could add other people in for the ceilings or whatever. But he is the foundation because
I
because
can't.
because as soon as that happened, everybody started copying that style. Everybody, they copied him more than they copied anything Frank Miller did with the Dark Knight. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, you can see it just from the fact of the next successful publishing company that came into play that tried to copy all of it, which was Image Comics.
I, I would
But see,
ar- Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
I can't. I, s- I disagree in that he's a part of the wokeness. What I would say is he opened the door that the wokeness walked through. He did not create the wokeness, but he absolutely made it possible. He created a foundation and a world for the wokeness to flourish in. He didn't make them, but he made them possible for them to basically he he laid a foundation, he built walls. Frank Miller carpeted and decorated the interior. The woke mob saw that and say, "Oh, great! Here is some place where we can now flourish." If I'm making sense.
No. Actually, that's perfect. Actually, you said it better. That's what I was trying to say. You actually
And
said it better than I did. That's perfect.
and for me, based off what you just said in his whole speech rhetoric, he's with them because for them to be like, let a he made a place for us to come in. His whole speech rhetoric here in this article is woke in itself. From calling not just the movies, but the comics themselves, the whole genre, being
Right.
a blight to culture. The whole thing being an infantilization and a precursor to fascism. Um, when you look at regular television today, outside of anything that could be considered comics or anything of that genre of male entertainment, it's obvious it's a fascist move to get rid of male content, and he's with it.
Well, see, okay, Eisen, again,
Mhm.
here's where I slightly disagree. Again, I don't think he is with the woke. He has, see, because the woke, the woke mob, or let's be specific because specificity is very important.
Mhm.
The woke mob does not have a problem with superhero movies or comics. The woke mob wants to push an ideology and they want to push an agenda. If you listen to what Alan Moore is saying, his word is saying he wants to completely do away with all of it. The woke mob does not want to do away with that. That's why I said you have to look closely. It's very nuanced. If you take a cursory glance, one might think that what he's saying is woke, but he's not. He wants to burn the house down. That's why I'm saying you have to understand he's a
Right.
strange duck. The woke mob, they want to remodel and completely renovate the house to their image.
Right.
Michael
That's
Miller wants
But
to completely burn the house down.
right.
And
Because
that's it.
what you have to understand, and a lot. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but you got to understand who Alan Moore is. I'm not saying Alan Moore is with the woke crowd. I'm not even saying that he's pandering to them. What I'm saying is that a lot of the tools they use to get in and do what they do is because of what he started. Because for all intents and purposes, there are two things Alan Moore has made abundantly clear for over 30 years plus. Number one, his religion, he's a sorcerer. Number
Yep.
two, his political alignment, point blank, is anarchist. An anarchist does not care about ideologies. They don't. I'm not saying that Alan Moore is aligning himself with it. I'm just saying that what he's done over the years has created the tools and the access for them to be able to do what they do. And him coming out now complaining about it and saying that comics are this or movies are this when you made your bones off of it and made a whole lot of money, and now you want to come out later on and talk like this is disingenuous to me.
uh, and
Bingo.
oh my bad.
I agree 1000%. You cannot take a cursory glance at what he said and jump to the conclusion that he's woke. He's not. You have to look at him and his words in aggregate over everything that he's done.
Yep.
And that's where I really am looking at it. It's just I guess that's where we'll differ on
Hmm.
that whole aspect. On the aspect of, I agree with y'all on the aspect of him laying the foundation. It's just that I see in his words, and then him being a sorcerer and an anarchist, that just says crazy to me. I can't see how you have that somebody like that cannot be nuts.
Well,
Um,
well. Oh, I'm sorry. Good. I'm sorry.
and just when I look at the rhetoric that he's quoted here, I mean it's the same. It's the same way the woke does things. And the one thing I understand is that the woke mob has power, and they are shifting these types of stories in a way that suits and is a way from typical male content to even make it more feminine. That's
But
why I
but
say that he's with them.
No, I
But
know, and I get it. I get what you're saying because to some degree you could see that he he'll be on their side before he's on ours. Bottom line. So the interesting part is that and this might be something Logic understands because of our age,
Mhm.
but Logic and I have literally watched the actual progression on who's taken over the mantle. Because, like I said, it started with Alan Moore and Frank Miller,
mhm,
and Alan Moore alone opened the door. And DC plays a big part of this with their Vertigo line, right?
Mhm.
Where they brought in Paul Jenkins, Jamie Delano, Alan Davis, Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, and those guys picked up that second phase of it and started adding in some of the ideological stuff. And then after that time frame in that particular group, we moved into the next group, which was the most recent one to really come to an end to some degree, and that would be Brian Michael Bendis and all the guys in that group. And now we have who, and
mm,
now we have who we have now: Leah Thompson, Vita Ayala, Heather Antos, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
and
Um,
don't forget Joe Michael Straczynski.
Yes, J. Michael Straczynski, yeah, the guy who created Babylon 5. That's correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yep, that's correct. He sure did too. Yeah. So I mean, I guess we're coming from that perspective. But I do agree with Eisen though. If you put us in front of him and them in front of him, he's gonna pick them. There's no
Yeah,
question to that. So he will to some degree, if not largely, align with them before he ever would with us. And which is interesting because the reason we exist is because of the work he's done. So we know I mean it's a weird dichotomy. It really is.
yeah, but see, still here's the thing. He's not actually woke, and see, here's why. You one cannot take a cursory glance. What Alan Moore did, he introduced ideology. He introduced a touch, clearly a touch of anarchism, of anarchy, with a little flavoring of some slight Marxism. Now, what the woke mob did, they came in and they said, okay, we're going to introduce ideology, but their ideology is to remake the world into their woke mob nonsense. They want to take some anarchy to help remake the world into their nonsense. See, so so what I'm saying is he's not woke, but he created the tools that the woke use. The woke mob with their ideology and their agenda is not the ideology and agenda that Alan Moore gave us. That Alan Moore
Right.
opened the door, but
Right. You're
they're
right. Yeah.
I get what
they're
you're
using the
saying.
Yeah,
same
which is what I
tools.
said before. Yeah, everything you said is what I said before, for sure.
I,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eisen. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I get what you're saying. That is not the ideology he had. I'm saying that that's what he has now. That's the difference.
Mm.
I see, and I got to be fair with you. I can't say you're right or wrong. I don't have
Well, I get
enough.
you.
I don't. I don't have it.
I'm just basing it all
Yeah.
off what I see here in this article and just in the
Yeah.
rhetoric. And because here's my thing. I mean, of course, the bitter part in there is definitely accurate because he's talking about all of these characters have been stolen from their original creators. All of them.
Mhm.
I mean, you now
You can
look,
hear that in
that's
there,
a
yeah.
And he's
that's
one
a
of them.
big bold statement to say all of them. I mean,
Well,
if
well,
somebody got paid,
But
you
Hmm.
but
can't
so
necessarily say they're stolen, and
but
everybody borrows everything.
but
but he's one
he
of them.
is
Yes,
right
yes.
from a purely ideological standpoint because a lot of people get upset when I
Mhm,
say that Batman
mhm,
Batman as he was originally created and as he was up until the 1960s television show, he was a borderline, not he is, but he's a borderline psychotic. He is a
yes.
violent vigilante and he damages and wrecks every personal relationship that he has.
Agreed.
That's who he always was. The 60s television show changed it and made him into a joke. The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller brought him back to his original roots, which
Right.
was literally the copy for Tim Burton's 1989 movie. Now, several artists, including King and Chuck Dixon have brought him back to those roots. But that's who and what the character of Batman is. So when Alan Moore says all of these characters have been stolen, that's what he means. He not only means from a financial standpoint, but also from an ideological standpoint. Because the thing when you look at Alan Moore, everything that he says, he always speaks in allegory. There's always
Yeah.
double and triple meaning to everything that comes out of that man's mouth.
Yeah,
Oh,
because Alan Moore will
yeah,
say one thing. Alan Moore will say one thing, and he's talking about three different things at the same time.
yeah,
When he say they're stolen, he'll say he's meaning that they're stolen monetarily, they're stolen
Right.
creatively, they're stolen contractually, and they're
Hmm.
stolen ideologically. Alan
right,
Moore talks like that all the time. I mean,
right,
that's
Right.
that's why I said you got to read in between the lines with him. You really do.
right,
Yeah, you
and
cannot take a cursory glance at anything that man says.
right,
Anything.
right, yeah, and I did gather that he wasn't just talking about financially. Um, that's why I said, making the whole point of that everybody has taken from something, throughout to make their characters or different stories. They come from something before, or a combination of other stories before.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that was my whole
Excuse me.
meaning on that. Yeah, I
yeah,
definitely agree with that. It's just that I'm saying just strictly based off what his speech is now and how he's aligning with it now, that who he was then whenever he created V for Vendetta, whenever he did Watchmen, that this right here is who he is now. He's not that anymore. That's all I'm saying.
But
So,
see,
well, yeah,
question.
yeah, and I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and we could definitely jump back in, but just a question for the panel. Now, in that article, he talks about how the adults' love for superheroes will somehow be a precursor for fascism.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's going extreme to say an adult's love for superheroes is a precursor for fascism.
That's what I was
Cause,
asking.
cause I'm still trying to wrap my brain like, okay, my interest in the original Batman, the original Spider-Man, Iron Man, any original character you could think of back in the day. Somehow, even though I'm in my 30s, me still liking them will somehow lead me down to fascism. I'm still trying to wrap my head like, how is that even possible? So I
If
It's
just
I
Lex.
may,
want to
It's Lex Luthor.
if I may,
uh,
if I
go ahead,
may,
Druism. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think, I think, and you might be, you probably might be thinking the kind of thing I'm thinking, that the pursuit of power, any kind of power, superpower, political power, mercantile power, technological power, whatever, I think because, and I forget who actually brought this up, because he initially came up with his own comic book in regard about superheroes and about how they themselves can become even worse than the villains that they fight, and he become eventually they become what they hate, what they're trying to fight against. They become fascists, they become extreme, they become violent, they become psychopaths, and all these other things. So what I think what he was trying to say in regards with this is that if you love these particular teams, if you patternize your life similar to what's in these narratives that are initially supposed to be for children, eventually he's saying that you will become the very kind of things that these particular things that you idolize are against.
but that's
Well, the
not
thing,
what
well,
he
the
was
thing about
saying
that,
though.
the thing about
I,
that is that when you look at, okay, what he's trying to do is he's trying to equate power corrupts, absolute power corrupts
yeah,
absolutely. But what
yeah.
he fails to understand is that the only characters that fit that allegory, that analogy he's talking about, are the ones he made.
Mm-hmm.
Because the standard concept of superheroes in comics actually teaches us moral and ethical values and codes. That's why they're so important to us, especially as young men growing into adult men, especially for young men who don't have a father figure and who use comics or whatever, yada yada, like I did. So he and that's the thing. he's really criticizing himself on his own work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
Because
that. Is
That's
this
what I
more
was
of
be-
thinking
be-
is
too.
this
because
is this more
because
of a criticism of himself
right
more
because
than anything else?
yeah, because let's be real. Superman does not walk around acting like anybody from The Watchmen. Batman does not go around acting like V from Vendetta. He's really criticizing his own work. He's dissatisfied with what he's caused. And this is not the first time
Uh-oh.
he's made comments like this before. I've watched him in live interviews,
Uh-oh.
okay, where he's regretted what he's done. He said it point blank. And then, like I said, you mix in the fact that he didn't get the rights back to Watchmen that was promised to him. He made sure that any movie that was done with him, if he doesn't have creative control, his name not put on it in the whole 9 yards. And because in that respect, Alan Moore is to comic books as Stephen King is to novels. They can write great books, but their movie translations suck.
Mhm.
But I
And now he's looking at all this money coming from the MCU, all this stuff that DC's doing in the whole 9 yards, and he's getting a little tight. That he's thinking, okay, well, my Swamp Thing could have did this, especially after the last Swamp Thing TV show that got critical acclaim. You know what I'm saying? They've used his storyline for the Man Who Has Everything multiple times, from animation to everything else. Yeah, like I said, man, to me he comes across as a bitter dude. He's not with the woke crowd, but he's parsing his words very carefully, so he rides that fine edge. So he can either be on their side or he could be on the other side. It's just a fine line. And then Alan Moore is wonderful for that. I mean, he's been doing this for 40 plus years. And like I said, he kicked it off even before Watchmen and all that, even before Swamp Thing. Like I said, in England in 1982 with Miracle Man. It's the most brutal adult story ever done in a comic. I mean, it is brutal.
Now,
Okay,
Logic
so,
Fighter,
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
gonna say, so before we continue, we are joined by the panel by good sir Free Zone Lou. I gotta play his intro.
Are you aware of the proper method that one should use to eliminate weeds? You see, weeds, when left unchecked, will rob the flower of its proper nutrients. So what do? If you uproot the weed, then you disturb the flower. Its roots and soil don't like to be interfered with.
So, what do you do?
You learn to plant flowers that utilize the weeds as a form of nourishment. Take a look. This flower is an example of a beautiful exterior masking its true intentions. Intentions that are really quite brutal.
All right, Mr. Free Zone, how's it going, sir?
Free zone.
Hey, salute, gentlemen. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've been on the road.
You're Borging.
Free Zone, you're Morgan a bit.
Borging Free Zone.
You become a low cutest, bro.
You are Borging.
Yeah, you become a low cutest, bro. You gotta resist the Borganization.
While he sourced that out, I just want to say I want to be clear, I don't disagree with anything either of you two gentlemen said. I just think that, with respect, you're not seeing the complete picture. Everything Alan Moore says and does is allegory. It was deeper. I think it is deeper than just superheroes can be bad. I go back to the head tagline. Who watches the Watchmen? Who watches the Watchers on the wall? It was an allegory for not deifying our heroes, our real life heroes being politicians, athletes, and entertainers. Because when we deify these people, because they have the same depravities and evils that we do, they can rule us with an iron fist or worse. And that has largely come to pass. So it is, again, going back to who and what Alan Moore is in aggregate. I think that is the deeper meaning, the allegorical meaning behind Watchmen. It is more than just superheroes.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I don't actually, to be honest with you, I think we're all right. It's just to what degree each point is. And I think all of them are correct. I really do.
So you're saying he's against idolizing or the idolization of the concept of the superior man.
No, I don't think that.
I don't.
I think he wants
I'm
to
not
be
sure.
the superior man.
Yeah, that's where I was going. That's exactly
Yeah.
where I was going.
I was trying to go with logic here because what you
Oh, okay, my bad.
from what he was saying, it sounds like Moore is trying to caution us against the idealization or the idolizing of the concept of the superior man being a person who has great power. Like I said before, it could be physical, mental, superpowers, exactly, whatever. Instead of us having this as an ideal and almost to a point worshiping something like that, be careful of doing that, because if you do that, because of the foibles of these people are as humans, they still can do just as bad or worse than the regular man. That's
Right,
what I'm
but
getting
see,
from you.
but here's what's weird about that. Here's what's weird about that. This is coming. Look, this is a guy who's talking about how liking these characters or believing in them leads to fascism. When he's the dude who's a living, breathing anarchist. Your function as an anarchist is to live and let live. There's no structure, there's no government, there's no this, there's no that. So here you are trying to warn people about becoming something when actually by your own political point of view, they're allowed to do whatever they want to. And going back to what I said earlier, there's a little bit of Lex Luthor in there, because that's how Lex Luthor feels about Superman. Because at the end of the day, Lex Luthor believes an all-powerful entity coming out of nowhere, yada yada yada, takes away from the ability for regular humans to achieve, or they're supposed to be better than them, and etc. and so on. It's not exactly the same, but there's bits in there.
Truism, what I was saying is it's allegory. What Alan Moore was saying is don't deify, don't deify public people, meaning our leaders, meaning our politicians, athletes, and entertainers. We tend to pedestalize and deify these people and worship them as heroes.
Correct.
In order to tell that lesson, he used the allegory of superheroes. He couldn't just come out and say, don't pedestalize athletes, politicians, and entertainers. So he used the allegory of superheroes. Don't worship superheroes because they are evil. That's what he did. That is the complexity of the movie. It's the allegorical story that he used.
And I would agree that is what he did, but he became.
Oh no!
No. He became it. He became what originally he was against. He has become it because nobody is practicing sorcery for humble reasons. You practice more power to gain more power.
That's correct. That's why I said what I did earlier with the fact that it's fascinating to me, allegory or not, that what he's saying now fascinates me because he didn't live by it earlier.
So
now
let me throw this out. Let me just throw this curveball. If he is a self-professed anarchist, which he is, as a self-professed anarchist, isn't he actually engaging in anarchy right now by telling people to reject his work and his contribution and comics in general?
But don't you consider that contradictory, since an anarchist believes that you should do what you want to do without anybody telling you how to do it?
But an anarchist is also against structure.
True. But and he may be against an anarchist is against structure, but an anarchist, like I said, also believes that you don't get to walk around telling people how to go ahead and do stuff, much less what they believe or how to carry it out.
So you're saying this guy's like chaotic neutral?
No, he's not.
No,
that's the point. No. That's the curveball I'm trying to throw out. What I'm saying is, see, Lawrence, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree. But my counter is, your assumption comes from the point that he's thinking rationally. And my point is, he's not thinking rationally. He is not a rational anarchist. He's a wild anarchist. He just wants, at this point, He just wants to see the entire world burn.
Okay. Now
Huh.
from that perspective, I totally get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. You're not wrong because that would make him pure chaos. And
Boom.
considering to some degree, that is a portion of magic him and Grant Morrison practice. So yeah,
Hey,
yeah, I get you. I totally get where you're coming from now. I get it.
And I do get where you're coming from, but to my point, nobody is practicing sorcery
Hmm.
for humble reasons.
how
When
do you
you're
know that?
practicing something to gain more power, you want to be the focus and the attention of it all.
From your point of view,
I got an
with
ego
all
too,
respect,
so
from your
I
point of
get it.
view, but
Yeah.
that's your point of view, and I
Well,
Well,
understand.
question.
but I,
But that's
actually,
your point of
actually,
view.
what's fascinating that I'm sorry, Truism. I'm sorry. You go first. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that. I apologize.
No, no, you go first.
I was going to ask. So then, given that that is the case, could it be aside because as Logic says, there's a lot of
Allegory.
layers,
Yeah,
to what Alan Moore is saying. There's not what he's saying really cannot really be interpreted easily in one particular meaning, right?
that's true. Absolutely.
Right.
So then,
It,
could
it,
it
it,
possibly
it,
be
it could literally be all of the above and none at the same time.
okay? So then, could it also
Mm.
be added in with this? Is the fact of as Eisen was bringing up the whole fact of the whole part of the ego? Could it also possibly be that maybe he's doing all this along with everything else that everyone has mentioned? It's just basically look. I didn't get. He's doing. He's having a little Richard moment. I created all of this. I'm the originator. I'm the creator of all this. He's kind of doing that a little bit because his
It's
ego was not quite
it's
mollified, more or less.
it's possible. Okay. How can I put this? Okay. In my early days, I studied magic. I dealt with people who did magic of all types, chaos, Wiccan, voodoo, the whole nine yards. And here's one of the first things you have to understand. Science is talking to the world in words it understands. Magic is talking to the world in words it cannot ignore. Does that make sense?
Okay,
Mm.
that's a way of thinking about it. Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I like that.
No,
Okay,
no, 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 no. It's not a way of thinking about it. That is the
No.
foundation before you begin the work in it. You have to
huh,
understand the difference. Science attempts to explain things in rational ways to
uh-huh.
make you and the world come to an understanding with each other.
Okay,
Magic subverts that and forces the world to do things that it naturally wouldn't because you're making it do it. It cannot ignore.
It's
Does that make sense?
subjugating things,
Thank you. There you go.
okay,
which
yeah,
is which is why I said my whole statement about the power aspect of it.
I
So
have to
that's why I
disagree.
go with I think it's all of the above.
okay.
Um, I
Hey,
have
do I
felt
sound better now?
you sound
Yeah,
Oh,
you
far
do,
much
Yes,
better,
bro.
sir,
bro.
you
You
do.
Much
good,
better.
Freezy? You
All
good?
Much
right, all
better.
right.
You
I'm on the
resisted the
road.
board, bro. Thank you.
I'm on the road, so forgive me, man. I'll be in and out. But I'm listening to what everything y'all are saying, and I'm not too familiar with the author as y'all are, but in a weird way, I think it's kind of interesting because prior to this, I was listening to Sigma Jones, Sigma and Eisen. I was listening to y'all stream on the what was it, the laws of human stupidity,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and
Good
I
show.
got halfway
I
through
still
it. I
have
got
to catch
halfway
that.
through it. Very good show. But to me, this is the consequence of taking a concept that has all these different meanings and just allowing somebody who's stupid to just take it and run with it. You know what I mean? Like once you put it out there, you can't really control who takes it and runs with it. Um, it's to me, it's something like that. I'll land the plane there and I'll pop back in.
Um,
Right on.
that's
But
a
Logic,
that's a
you was
good
about to
point.
say something?
yeah, I was just gonna say, with all due respect, from my perspective and my travels, um, I'd have to dis. I have we shall agree to disagree with your assessment, Lawrence. Maybe that has been your perspective on the esoteric paths that I have traveled and continue to travel. That has not been the case on my experience at all. For some individuals, In some cases, it's like everything else, but it's not about, as to use your term, subverting nature and the world as is. For some people, can be an as one aspect amongst many, but not the end all be all goal in and of itself.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
So I
Yeah, yeah.
think,
No, no, we don't disagree on that. You're absolutely right.
and for
You're
some
absolutely
people,
right. I'm just talking from the perspective of my history with the variety of people that I've dealt with over the
right.
decades and how I did it. But where we no, when we speak of magic, man, there's no definitive answer. None. You're right. I'm right. Everybody's right. So, no, I mean that's the nature of it. No,
Yeah.
so I mean no, we don't disagree on that at all. Yeah.
And the for me personally, my biggest takeaway here is that when it comes to Alan Moore could literally tomorrow come out and say he identifies as a toaster oven, or he could tomorrow come out and say that he retracts everything that he says and that he wants to go back to working with DC Comics on another book. That
Yeah.
is Alan Moore.
Yeah.
That's what I meant when I say he's a strange duck. You cannot take anything he says at face value. Everything with him is allegory. Everything with him is two and three things all at the same time. So here's the thing. Um, Eisen, you are correct. I'm correct. Lawrence is correct. Truism is correct. Freezone is correct. We're all correct. We're all correct because he
Agreed.
is all these different things all at the same time. He could literally, 100% literally come out tomorrow with his hair dyed purple and say he identifies as a toaster, or he could say he's going back into the office to work for DC. That's who
Yeah.
Alan Moore is.
Yeah.
That's just who he is.
And
And he can do it. He can do it because
He can.
for all intents and purposes, Alan Moore is the inheritor to Stan Lee to some degree.
mm,
You know what? For me personally, Alan Moore, Frank Miller, John Byrne, even though may he now rest in peace, and
Who?
Chris Claremont.
Wait, who rest in peace?
John
John
Byrne.
Byrne, hadn't he passed?
No,
I could have sworn he
John
passed.
Byrne?
no. John Byrne's still doing comics. He's doing his own version of X-Men on his website.
Oh, I
Uh-oh.
stand
Well,
corrected.
hold on. I'm double checking in case I
You're
missed the
putting that
news.
man in the grave for no
I could
reason.
have sworn
He's
no,
still
Taking this
alive.
man out of here early, man. Look at him.
am I
No,
wrong? I'm wrong.
Yeah,
No,
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 I
he's
he's
don't.
still
still
alive.
alive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
still
see
alive.
any.
Still
I don't see
around.
that
I
he has not passed as of yet.
I stand
Man, don't scare me
corrected.
like that, bro. Woo!
Let me tell
You
you,
scared the
for
mess out of me
me
with that one,
personally,
man. I mean, we already lost George this year, man. I'm not trying to take John with him. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
for me personally, funny enough, ironically, he is my favorite comic book artist of all time. John
Mm.
Byrne. His work on the X-Men, on Fantastic Four, Captain America, and a few other titles to me, and Superman, to me, for me personally, just me personally, John Byrne is number one, and um, Jack Kirby is number two, and I'd say toss it between Ditko and Johnny Romita Sr. Just me personally.
No, no, no. I don't disagree with any of that. Especially considering John Byrne will tell you himself, his work was influenced by Kirby. You can see it.
Mhm.
But the thing I'm saying is that Byrne has had some great legendary comic runs.
Right.
Alan Moore has redefined an entire industry and genre.
True.
That's
He
that's
did.
that's significantly different.
He
Mm,
did. He did. He did.
mm. Yeah, and that's where the premise that where Lauren said that we're all right, where I agreed, because I mean, to be able to be all of that at the same time and neither of it, that is the very definition of control and power.
Yeah, I have no doubt whatsoever that his work in magic plays no small part in that.
Yeah.
I remember him and Grant Morrison were throwing magic spells at each other for a while.
Hmm?
Can I
Yeah,
ask a
man.
question?
Yeah,
What?
Yeah, because Grant Morrison practices chaos magic.
Can I ask a question though?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
I
I'm
ask a
sorry.
question? Only question, not an opinion. Eisen, you said to be all those things and nothing all at the same time.
And neither of them, yes.
But isn't that the definition of chaos, not power?
To control people to where you can be what you want to be and then change it at any moment and they buy into it and have to, that's power and control to me.
Okay,
It can
I
be, it
see
can,
your
it,
point.
or it can be all of that.
I see your
Chaos
point.
and power and control.
Okay, okay. I see your point. I was only questioning.
No, no
I see
problem.
your point.
Now the question becomes, at least for me, and this is a question I'm just throwing out there. I go across the whole panel with it.
Mhm.
Now that Mr. Moore has made his commentary, now that Mr. Moore has thrown out his allegories thereof or lack of or whatever have you may, how does that go forward in affecting what we're seeing now in the industry? Does it change it? Does it fix it? Does it make people pause and pull back and like we need to self-correct? Or does it make them think, okay, he validated us, let's push forward and make it even worse?
The last
Those are
one. The
those,
last
what
one.
I figured as much, but those are some serious questions to ask because whether people want to admit it or not, Alan Moore is technically a leader within the industry. He speaks,
Yeah,
people stop and listen.
you're right.
That's why I made the comment about his the analogy of him kind of like Stan Lee, because when Stan Lee starts talking, people shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And Alan Moore is pretty much the only person in the industry still today, past or present, who could do that. So
Maybe
what is it? So
Prince.
what is
You
his
know what?
goal with? So what is his goal with this interview? Is he trying to make a change to the industry? Is he trying to give them warning? Is he trying to make them backpedal? Is he trying to make them self-correct? Is he talking all this because he's technically hiding away the fact it might be what Logic said? He's going to show up and pop up at DC all of a sudden out of nowhere. I mean, what made him do this right now? What was the purpose?
Yeah, and that's the thing about Alan Moore. He, even if we can't see it, again, nothing this man says can ever be taken at face value. He speaks in allegory. He talks in allegory. Every piece of work he's ever done is allegory. So one has to take a deep dive and basically try to glean what his purpose is here, because
Hmm.
this is not face value. That I can promise you. When you take Alan Moore in aggregate, this is not face value. He's doing this for a specific reason. The problem with Alan Moore is it could be completely rational, it could be completely irrational. That's the thing. You can't assume that he has a rational purpose behind it. It could be an irrational purpose. But
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's not obvious. That I can
Or
promise you.
I was gonna say, or it could be an irrational person doing something rational for once. But I would say I mean, hey, it happens now.
And therefore being more chaotic by doing such, because now a chaotic person being rational,
Well,
which is stuff made more chaotic.
what I'm looking at here is based on the rhetoric in that article. Well, not just the article, but it's based also on what he said in an interview. One, he wants to stay relevant, and two, to be able to morph what you say like that, that way you can't be canceled and they have to pay attention to you.
Well, there's another aspect to this too. And again, looking at the multi layers of Mr. Moore
Mhm.
and Logic, you might follow me on this. There's also the possibility that everything he said means nothing except for the fact that it got people talking about him, thinking about him, and as a sorcerer, he's using that energy to do something.
Oh, chaos magic. Chaos
Hey,
magic.
you know what, Lawrence? That would really fall in line with what I said too.
Yeah,
Getting
yeah, it
people
would.
to talk about would
Hmm.
be the relevancy part, and
Yeah,
then the whole sorcery part of not being canceled. That way you can stay relevant and
yeah.
it
It's a, it's
won't.
a
Yeah.
yeah. It's a combination worship magic and sympathetic magic.
Which is all part of chaos magic.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, Logic?
I said which is all a part of chaos magic, but I digress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be used as chaos
Mhm.
magic, but it can be used for other things too. But I think it's at, if I remember correctly, it's at its strongest with chaos. Chaos and I think
Voodoo.
Wiccan.
Voodoo, I think.
No. Voodoo.
No,
Actually, no. You don't. No, you don't need it for voodoo.
no. There's only one thing stronger that we're not gonna we're not gonna mention. We're just gonna
Yeah.
walk right on. We're gonna walk right
You,
on.
you sound real. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you
I can
breaking
Yeah.
barely
out
hear
there.
you.
Does he sound low to
People
y'all?
say,
Yeah,
yeah,
he
it
does.
sound like you're like in a tunnel or somewhere.
One second, let me shut off the How do I
So
sound now?
Oh, you
Oh,
sound
better,
much
You
much
better.
yeah.
better,
Okay,
much
what I
better.
was
Yeah.
There
saying
you
was
go. There you go.
there was only one thing more powerful than that, but we're not gonna mention that. We're just gonna keep walking on down the road.
No,
so
no. I
then
know.
what
I
is
Sounds
yeah.
good.
I know what you're talking about. We'll talk about that later on another. on this. I know
Sounds
exactly what you're
good.
talking about. No,
so what you're
and,
saying here
and
is
don't get me wrong. We're not trying to be rude. It's just that
yeah.
some things should not be said out loud.
No,
Right,
no, no,
right.
no,
No, I
no,
get
no,
it.
no, no, no,
That's
no.
why I'm not arguing. I got
So,
you.
so you're basically saying he got the whole mindset of any publicity, good or bad, is still publicity. There's no
Right.
such thing as bad publicity. That's what he's using this for.
Well, I don't. Well, like I said, my personal opinion, I don't think it's about publicity because he's Alan Moore. All he has to do is sneeze, he'll get that.
Exactly.
So so I
But
like I said,
I wouldn't say publicity then. Relevance. I guess to have his name more in kind of like more in the public discussion, more or less. Because I mean, when was the last time anyone really actually brought him up in a conversation?
Well,
You know,
again, yes and no. Everything with him is allegorical. It's
Right.
not for the sake of being relevant. By having people talk about him, when you're focusing on him, your energy is now directed towards him. So he can
exactly,
use that energy
exactly.
for whatever his purposes are.
Relevance and control.
Right, because you got to understand, Alan Moore cares nothing about relevance.
Exactly.
Why do you say? Well, why do you say that?
Because he never has. You gotta understand. Okay, okay. Let me try this.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, from the very beginning, Alan Moore has never given a rat's fanny about relevance ever. Alan Moore is that guy who likes to run in, do something, and then run back out and leave a mystery of you want who that dude was, how was he able to do that, yada yada yada.
Okay.
Alan Moore, with what he practices, magic wise, and in his writing and art, is that he likes being that person that relevance doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is the fact that you're thinking about him, that you're talking about him, that you're talking about his work. He feeds off that kind of energy. That's why I had said the thing about worship magic and sympathetic magic. Sympathetic magic is that you lean towards him, you know, and his understanding, whether you understand it or not, but you co-sign, for lack of a better terminology, just because. And worship magic is no different than when you're constantly in prayer to the Most High or whatever deity you want to, you know. If I'm muddling it, help me out, Logic.
So I was gonna
I will
say
this. It's not about he's not about feeding his ego, Eisen, because I think I know where you're looking at. He's not feeding his ego. It's about getting you to talk about him. So as you talk about him and you focus, it directs some of your energy towards him. He can
to be
then
used
take
for what
that
he's trying to
energy
do later.
Exactly. For
and
whatever magical spells he's using. It's not about the relevance. Remember, this man talks and everything he does is about allegory. It's not about feeding his energy. If it's not about the relevance, he doesn't care about whether you talk about him or not, because that feeds his ego. He does not have that ego of those egotistical drives. He wants you to talk about him so he can use your energy for a specific purpose.
Now watch this. Now watch this. This is where I'm going with it. He may not care about relevancy, but he needs it for control and power. You cannot care about something and at the same time not need it.
Right,
I
see what you're saying.
And want control and power, you have to have an ego.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying, which is what I was trying to say. It's not about feeding his ego for the need for the relevance for the sake of feeding his ego.
Right. I'm not
He
saying it's for the
wants
sake
he
of it.
wants the relevance.
But can't that be part of it
He
though?
wants people. No,
He has to have the relevancy. It's like somebody who doesn't care about money, but you have to have it to buy things that you need.
Right.
So
Exactly.
in this
Exactly.
case, so in this case, it's not about the relevance for ego's sake. It's by you talking about him, you direct your energy in his direction. Then he
Right.
uses that energy for his magical purposes.
Right.
And
Right.
So in other words,
that's the difference.
this stream is actually contributing energy to whatever
Yes.
he's doing.
Actually, I was waiting my turn because I was going to say that. I was
coming up.
Yeah, I was literally going to say that. And you got to take in consideration. Look at the timing of when he did this. It's right. It's right after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's at the tail end of Sukkot, moving slowly into Halloween. Dude,
I was waiting for you to say that.
And
you know what I'm saying? So I mean, and again, like I said, maybe it's me and Logic because we've grown up with this dude, but this is Alan Moore. This is what he does.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you want a really good look into his mentality, you only need 3 books, and Watchmen is not in that list. What you need is Miracle Man, Swamp Thing, and Promethea.
And what I was getting at about the ego aspect of it is to want control and power, you have to have some kind of ego. You have to want to control others, you have to have an ego.
Is it
now,
ego?
I'm not saying what kind.
Is it ego or is it arrogance?
But
why can't it be both?
But I'm
not saying it can. I was just
that was just a question I posed.
Oh, what I mean, for me, it could be both. I was just curious because the arrogance is to think that you could wake up in the morning and magically, psychically, energy-wise, take other people's stuff to go do something that you want to do without asking them. It's kind of arrogant, you know.
And usually, arrogant people have an ego.
True, this is true. I know I'm one of them.
Let me ask you this question. Is it that he wants to control people, or he just wants to take that energy to use for his own purposes? Because again,
I think it's the last one.
It's a fine line, but there is.
I think it's the last one. Yeah, I think it's the last one.
Difference.
I say it's both. He
wants to control people, just taking that energy to use for his purposes.
Yeah, I think it's the last one because he's been doing it, like I said, for decades. I mean, he's been doing this since 1982, and I haven't seen him like hurt anybody. As a matter of fact, there's been interviews where he said point blank, he's not a fan of doing stuff like that because what comes back to you from the universe. That's why it was crazy when everybody started talking about him and Grant Morrison throwing stuff back at each other.
Which is why, Lawrence, I said there's really only 2 other forms in this realm. One is equal, one's more powerful, but we'll talk about that off air.
Okay. And for me, I say it's both, just because of the simple fact it's about both. Because I mean, you have to. I mean, with that type of power, I mean, you can control others without necessarily harming them. But you don't have to.
What if he doesn't want to, though? What if he does not want to control something?
Well, I think the issue here is that it's what you're saying, Isaac. I get where you're coming from. I do.
Yeah.
But like I said, watching everything he's done for almost 40, 50 years, watching how he handles himself, watching how he does
right. I have a different perspective.
I have never seen him make any attempt to control anybody. I have seen him take that energy and use it to create his work, which is why we get the good stuff we do. Now
so wait a minute, you're saying that the energy that he gets from all of these things are actually powering his creative energies, I guess.
It's well known, Atrium, like if you listen to many artists, they will tell you that they don't go into details, but they say that a lot of their inspirations can come from esoteric thinking.
Now,
Alistair Crawley, anybody?
Yeah, Alistair
Aleister
Crowley.
Crowley. Now, let me add on to this, Eisen, TF.
Yes.
I just want to impart this.
Mm-hmm.
Just because someone takes energy from others and uses it for constructive purposes does not mean they have in any way or desire to control those people.
Yeah.
Okay, see, because where you and I think disagree, it sounds, and I could be wrong. So you tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding what you are saying. You are of the opinion that any person who is taking this esoteric energy from others and using it in any purpose, you are of the opinion that that person wants to control others. Now, am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, you are correct. And the other reason too that I get this is because he said in this article, he was telling grown men what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Okay, that's the point I made earlier.
So that is control.
Okay, so now let me interject here.
Mm-hmm.
His opinion is what he thinks people should do. Now, where I think that I disagree with your assumption that he wants to take energy to control people. That's an opinion. Like personally, listen. I think I read books and media that I consume. I prefer intricacy and complexity. I think all people should read books and only look at things that are intricate and complex and thoughtful. I don't like easy, simple, straightforward trope, but that in no way means that anything esoteric that I do is to control others.
Well, I would also say too.
Damn, I'm loving this conversation.
You know what?
But
my bad. Go ahead,
guys. I would say also look at the language he's using in that interview. So if a person is trying to be controlling, he would have mentioned an interview of if you are watching these, superhero movies and everything, then you're going to become fascism.
Yes.
I don't pick that up in his language. He's just more so he's just saying, well, I believe that anybody who watches superheroes is leading a precursor to fascism. Now, the latter sounds more like an opinion, which I think that's what he was getting at.
I get what you're saying.
But if he was saying if you watch these superhero movies and everything, then you're going into fascism. That will then say, okay, that sounds more controlling because he now is trying to guide you in some sort of direction. Whereas the article,
my bad.
I was just gonna say, whereas the article sounds just more like he just giving his opinion.
Well, here's the issue with that. The first one, like you said, I can see what you're saying about it being a controlling perspective. However, the other aspect is that we have to define an opinion. See, an opinion, us having this topical conversation is opinion. We have no power or influence to change anything. It's just an opinion. Right. However, we're talking about a man giving an interview to thousands of people who uses magic. How do we know that what he's saying is an opinion is actually not him laying the seed for manipulation? It's not controlling, at least manipulation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
that's why it comes back to my point of no one is practicing that stuff completely for goodwill. Manipulation is a form of power and control. It can seem very harmless.
Innocuous even. Yeah.
But
Eisen?
Yes.
Eisen, again, with all due respect, I disagree.
Okay,
your words were saying no one is doing this. Again, I disagree. There are people who do that. This is a fact. There are other people who don't do that. It is like any other aspect of human endeavor. You have people who have selfish drives, and you have people who don't have selfish drives.
I got
So,
you.
not every single person who practices any of the esoteric arts is doing so for ego and control. That is just not the case.
Maybe not ego. I was gonna say control, but for
Also,
me, oh my
not the
bad. Go ahead. I
case
thought you were done.
for you. Granted, and that's fine, that's fair
Yes,
enough.
sir.
But that is not the case that every person who practices any of the esoteric arts is doing so for ego, control, for power. That is not the case.
Well, I have a
I
question
got
then.
you. Oh my bad. I
What
was
would
gonna
they
ask
be
you. My
practicing it for, though, if not for
There,
those reasons?
there, there are many other reasons besides power and control and selfish reasons. There are many other reasons.
Give me one.
Well, I'll
Hold
give you
on. My
I'll
bad.
give y'all a prime example.
Okay.
So, Eisen and Logic, you'll love this.
Mm.
Sensei Takai.
Mhm.
One thing that he actually taught me and Kitagakure Jones
Mm.
is that the samurai also delve into esoteric thinking, and they believe in becoming one with nature gives them an elevated position when they go out into battle. Now, he explained to us that when he becomes one with nature and use the energy around him, he doesn't use it for combat or for battle. He uses it as a means of guiding him in the right direction to be more self-disciplined.
I got you.
So, in that essence, he's using nature in a form of elevating his life in a more positive direction.
I
So
got
he's
you.
manipulating energy, but he's
Mm.
not using it on other people. He's
I got
actually
you.
using it on himself.
I
Now,
got you. And
let
oh my
me
I
bad.
add
am,
on to
I am,
that.
I am absolutely fascinated the turn of events this conversation is taking. I'm loving this.
Oh, hey, I like it too. Yeah.
Let me
Because
add
I
I'm
had a
loving
question
this.
too, but go
I
ahead.
just want to add this one thing.
Mhm.
So, Truism asked me a specific question. So here is a specific answer.
Yeah.
One of many reasons a person can manipulate and focus energies for one's personal health that has nothing to do with any other individual's energy. That is again one of a myriad, 1,000 of reasons. Now, unfortunately, media and other sources have given people many preconceptions and ideas about anything esoteric. And on that note, I would like to maybe segue this conversation to a different topic so that we can actually discuss more male entertainment instead of esotericism.
Actually, what's interesting is that I'm not sure because I get where you're going with that logic with the segue, but I'm not sure if it's possible to do that anymore because we've kind of let the genie out of the bottle. And for all intents, no, because
Literally at this point.
but hear me out. Because for all intents and purposes, the discussions we have on male entertainment, are we not seeing some form of that with the ideologies that are being pushed to take away from it?
So let me ask you this. So let me ask you this, and this is going to not reveal the conversation you and I had in private, but to lightly touch upon that conversation you and I had in private.
No, no. You feel free. I mean, if you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it.
I won't. But I will say this to add on to the question that you just made. I'm going to bring forward to others a piece of the conversation you and I had in private, off air. From an esoteric point of view, in many of the esoteric schools of thought, feminine energy is seen as raw, unbridled energy. It is unfocused. It is chaos. It is destructive by nature. If left to her own devices, A woman or feminine energy will destroy herself and everyone and everything around her. Masculine energy is about control and focus. So the universe exists in balance, yin and yang. It is therefore a man's duty and role to focus, harness, and direct that energy into creative purposes. Case in point, fire. Fire is not destructive or productive. It simply is. It is about how you use it. It can be a weapon to destroy or a tool to build. So, where I'm going with this specifically is when we see this subversion of this woke mob ideology nonsense, this constant destruction of masculinity and male roles, and having these female Mary Sues, you are going against the way that we are hardwired as humans. We are hardwired for men to lead and take on masculine roles. And there's nothing wrong with that. It has existed for thousands of years. So to have some nonsensical, and I'll say that, nonsensical ideology attempt to upend that is ridiculous. And you're literally going against our nature, for lack of a better term.
And
No,
go ahead.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I don't. But I guess it's new. I guess it always comes down to nuance and perspective.
Right.
The truth is always going to be the truth. It's just a question of the perspective you're coming at it from.
Right.
For me, it's a situation in which if you look at society as a whole, and I'm only talking in the sense of male entertainment, that's all.
Right.
And what they're doing to male characters, straight characters, yada yada, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Looking at it just from that, all they're between mass media, between feminism, between alphabet community, and et cetera and so on, they're doing technically the exact same thing Alan Moore's doing, but instead with technology. They're doing it through media. They're doing it through books. They're doing it through the news. They're doing
Laws.
it through YouTube. They're doing it through laws. See, and so to me, that's what I meant about the genie's out of the bottle as far as it goes for us in this topic of conversation.
Gotcha.
Because for me, we would have got here eventually. It's just that Alan Moore helped push it forward. And that comes back to the allegory you said. That could have been a subtext of what he was trying to do as well, because Alan Moore's that kind of dude. So
Now,
Excellent
that's
point.
and actually, Lawrence, you bring up a good point. What if this particular article, and I'm just throwing it out here, just my opinion and all,
Mhm.
but what if that particular article was Alan Moore's means of getting men more open-minded to allegory and esoteric thinking?
well, it wouldn't surprise me. He's done it before.
The only thing with that is
Mm.
throughout the entirety of human history, the vast majority of human population has never been open to esoteric thinking. There's a reason why they're called the esoteric schools of thinking. There's a reason why they've always used allegory and, for lack of a better word, methods and ways to conceal and cover and restrict access and restrict the impartation of knowledge, because there's two things. So the thing when you talk about getting people to be more open-minded to esoteric thinking, a hammer in the hands of a child is dangerous.
True.
So you can't just, and unfortunately, a closed mind can't open doors. Most people, if you look at the entirety of the course of human nature, most people are either unwilling or outright reject anything that is of esoteric thinking, which is interesting considering that esoteric thinking predates your three Abrahamic religions by literally tens of thousands of years, but I digress. So
But there's a reason for that.
there are several reasons for that, but
Yeah.
before going too far down that line of thinking, what I want to say specifically, what I was saying is, I don't necessarily think that was a call in general. It may have been a call to the few who can discern what he was saying,
Mhm.
because that has largely always been the case. A call like that goes out but you're only ever going to have a few who can ascertain and discern exactly what he's saying
Right,
to
right.
to then at the very least elevate their thinking. Now whether they decide to explore esotericism is on them, but at the very least to elevate their thinking. And as we already know, the vast majority of the people on this planet will never elevate their thinking.
Well. I mean, like I said, and like I said, and like you said yourself, there's a variety of reasons for that. The biggest one, of course, above all things, is that you know, refusal to accept accountability or responsibility. Because, like the saying goes, once you know, you can't unknow. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, it's one of those
Mm.
situations. But like I said, Alan Moore being who he is, it could be a combination of everything and nothing. It could be one side or the other side, and again simultaneously. Alan Moore is living proof of that analogy I made for writing a story. There's the right answer, the wrong answer, and no answer at all. And if you're not careful, you can make all three simultaneously. Alan Moore is a living example of that.
Yes, he is.
He's a
And
living, breathing example of that. And it could be the subtext could have been a call to arms for men to buy into the propaganda. It could have been a subtle call to arms to wake men up that if you don't pay attention to what's going on, this is what it's going to do. So now get up and take your entertainment back. It could be everything and then nothing.
Mm.
to answer your question, Sigma, I really don't think it was a call to arms at all. Just because of the simple fact he stated 12-year-old boys in the interview. So I think if he was really trying to get some teen boys that were over the age of 12 to think esoterically, he would have provided some type of esoteric reference or something, some other type of content for them to absorb.
But think about this,
See,
Isaac. But
I
I'm
don't
not,
know.
and
well,
I'm not
well,
saying I'm completely right. I'm not saying anybody's complete. That's just what
right,
I'm viewing.
right. Well. This is okay. This is where I think this is just my opinion again, but this is where I think that maybe a little bit of reverse psychology is being used. If you're pointing out that people or adults who watch superheroes or read about superheroes or get into that industry, that somehow that's a precursor to fascism. Well, I kind of think that for a lot of men that are looking for, say, characters who have the traits that they are looking for, or you know, they want to emulate something that in their minds, um, kind of like that masculine image and all, then surely if you're saying something like that, and again, obviously the message is clear that the message could be interpreted in many different forms of fashion, but it's almost sound like he's using reverse psychology to almost entice male readers to go further deep with these superheroes or male centric type of superheroes.
Sigma, you make an excellent point because again, as we've said 1,000 times, Alan Moore is a walking allegory. Nothing he says can be taken at face value. If you focus on anything he says at face value, you're completely missing it.
Hmm.
You cannot take a precursory glance. So if he says something, and if you're thinking about what he says, and if it causes you to do a deeper dive and think deeper and to elevate your thinking, then he has already accomplished that goal.
Yep.
Bringing you back
Mm.
to esotericism, the seven hermetic principles. What is law number one? The law of mentalism. All is mental because mental is supreme. If it causes you to think and you engage in thinking and you elevate your thinking and now you start researching, there is your open call. Because when it
Hmm.
comes to anything esoteric, everything is allegorical because the best kept secrets are best kept sacred. Therefore, you
Right.
cannot openly say anything
Right, exactly. And that's why I keep bringing up the fact about him being a sorcerer, because
Whoa.
that's what sorcerers do. The way they talk will never be specifically designated point blank. It's
They
it's
can't.
it's, it's just it's not what they do. They can't because words have power.
Yes.
And they
Right.
Yes.
they know between desire, intent, words, and mentality, you can lay waste to this whole place. Yeah,
And also this.
even people who don't follow the esoteric path and say they're more along the lines of Christianity. Even the Bible speaks on being able to move a mountain with words and desire.
Do do people even know what the Book of Psalms really is? You know what? I'm gonna stop there. I'm
I'm
gonna
about to
stop there.
say, yeah, they not ready
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that
yeah.
It
Yeah,
ain't
yeah,
gonna.
one.
yeah.
You know what?
So
Erase
It's
that.
not
Yeah,
what you think it
yeah,
is.
we're not ready
yeah,
for that. And I
yeah.
tell you something else, just to move on real quick. I'm just gonna say
Mhm.
this real quick. The logic. That book is what I've been studying for the last 2 weeks.
You know what?
Wow.
I'll say this. I will say this. For every book, for every manuscript, for every scroll, for every grimoire, for every papyrus, for everything. Esotericism, every school of esoteric thought, it's an oral tradition.
That's
The
correct.
books are only ever 10 to 20%. The vast majority of it has literally been passed down for the 100,000 years of recorded human history
Yes.
Yep.
we have.
Yeah.
Yep. And in addition to that, there by the time you write that down, it's been decades, if not centuries, after the fact of it being used orally. So,
Literally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know,
And not only that, the message changes with the orator.
that's correct. That's correct.
Little nuances, and
It
then
depends.
Hmm.
a
It
little over
depends.
time becomes a big change. But
It depends.
And then translating it into different languages, you lose
yeah.
stuff as well.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Yes, you do. You do. That's which is why esoteric thought, as the schools of esoteric thinking are more oral tradition than your three Abrahamic religions. But again, just gonna I digress.
oh, nice question, SKC. You
Mm,
see
Yeah,
that logic? You see
It
that
SK,
depends.
logic?
SKC
mm.
asked this question: is it possible that esotericism closes itself off negatively by not accepting the possibility that an outside party may be able to attain their understanding in an alternative way?
My
I
answer
would
to you,
say, I would say, I would say yes with caveats. I would say it depends on what type of esotericism you're following. Because there's certain practices that allows for what he's asking, where everything's allowed in. As a matter of fact, as crazy as it sounds, there's a physical representation of that, and that would be Bruce Lee with Jeet Kune Do.
I
Hmm.
would answer
Interesting.
that question like this, as Casey. As Lawrence says, it depends on which school of esoteric thinking it is. As I said before, a hammer in the hands of a child is a dangerous weapon. So there are reasons why access has to be restricted and limited. And if you are able to um, gain gain entrance and acceptance, and as you learn more and more, you understand why things have to be that way. That you can only I don't want to say that there's only because there is not one way to learn anything. However, as the saying says, the best kept secrets are best kept sacred.
Yep.
If
Uh,
there,
oh my bad.
I'm trying to word this as effectively as possible. A lot of most of that negativity does not come from the schools of esoteric thought themselves. The majority of that negativity of which you speak has actually been generated by the three Abrahamic religions because they had to badmouth all esotericism in order to allow themselves to gain a foothold on this planet. Again, uncomfortable truths that adherents of the three Abrahamic religions don't want to accept or understand. With that said, esoteric knowledge, true esoteric knowledge, has to be restricted from the masses. So some of it, and I disagree with that term negatively, but I understand why you're using it. But it has to be restricted from the masses, and a person has to be taught properly, and they have to learn. Because again, a hammer in the hands of a child is dangerous. You can hurt yourself and others around you if you start dabbling in things that you don't know what you're doing and you have not received proper instruction.
Yeah.
And I would say that it is, to SKC's question, that the answer for me is yes, because of the word he went on to describe an outside party. That would mean someone who is not esoteric in nature, anyways. It's like looking up at the night sky. Someone in China is not going to see the same set of stars that I see, just like I'm not going to see the same thing that Logic is going to see in Germany and various parts around the different world. You're going to see a different set of stars. Now, just because what I'm seeing doesn't mean that Logic is wrong in what he's seeing, or somebody in China is wrong in what they're seeing. It's just that we can only see that small little piece in our own particular area. And I look at it too like someone who's reading the Bible. And I'm going to go with, what Sigmund Jones and I did on the basic laws of human stupidity.
I still have to catch that.
It's a great book. I really enjoyed it. But I would say that no matter whether it's a school of esotericism or not, there are just people that are not going to be able to understand no matter how they are taught. They have just reached their ceiling, and that's something that we as human beings have to accept.
I want to say this because I think Eisen, you bring up a good point, and I think that there is a larger gem that you may not even realize. The thing is this, right? Me personally, I've walked several esoteric paths. I have been through several schools of esoteric thought, and there are others that I have not walked through, but I know some things because of my background that I can understand and relate to and have knowledge of. I'll say this: no one school of esoteric thought has the entire pie, for lack of a better term.
Have the answer to everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Each school has a piece.
Right.
And because they're all drawing from the same pie. So there are some similarities, there are some things that are alike, there are some that are unalike, but they're all drawing from the same pie.
Right.
So it depends. A person may go into this school of esoteric thought, and a person may go into another school of esoteric thought. They may end up, coming across certain of similar things. There may be a person who's not esoteric at all, a person who's not even religious at all. They may just start reading books, and they're reading books, and they're reading books, and they come across certain things. But again, that's why I said, if you actually walk through a school of esoteric thought, whether you walk through one or several, you're going to come to realize the vast majority of it is oral tradition. You're only ever going to get a small part if you are not in any school of esoteric thought. And that is something that, for lack of a better term, lay people either don't understand or out and out reject. Because I see a consistent theme that, I don't have to be in there. I can just read all the books and I can just learn everything. And you can completely disagree with me, but no.
Well, there are
simple answer. No.
There are three things that I have to say. The first one is, I would shout out to A-Truism. Thanks for coming up, brother. Appreciate it.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, were you saying
Free Zone as well?
Yeah, Free Zone as well. I'm sorry, Free
I
Zone.
want
You
to
as well.
apologize to both of those gentlemen.
Did you want to say something, Sigma?
Took a term that they were uncomfortable with, because I thanked them.
Oh no, A-Truism said Yeah, Altruism said he enjoyed the conversation. He just got to tend to his little one. So
Yeah, and Free Zone was good too. He just said he was in a bad spot for a
yeah,
signal.
he's out in the boonies. Yeah.
But were you saying something, Sigma?
Yeah, I was going to say before you continue, Lawrence. Shout out to Laughing Dog with the Cash App donation. He says very great discussion and very educational. So thank you so much, Laughing Dog. But Lawrence, please continue.
And so I got two more things, and I'm sorry, I want to add something else onto that. That shout out you just gave, I want to give a shout out to Nameless Protagonist too. He got that chat on fire, man. I don't know if y'all been reading, but he's been writing, but he's on fire. For real. But the other thing is that one's pertaining to the entertainment and male entertainment. The other one's to Alan Moore. The first one to the male entertainment is the fact that it's fascinating because, again, at the end of the day, there could be some argument that the system that they're using in play follows along a lot of esoteric aspects for removing that aspect of male entertainment to weaken a structure, an industry, a people, a group, whatever you want to call it. And the other thing is, in reference to Alan Moore, wouldn't it be actually absolutely humorous that everything we talked about prior meant nothing to him? He wanted us to have this conversation.
And to your first point, Lawrence, that was the reason, that was what drew me to this article, and why I even brought it up to you gentlemen, because of how it affects the state of male entertainment in general and how things are going. And there was no way of the way this discussion went, there was no way of getting around how it's affecting all of that.
No, and I would agree. Like I said, I would honestly make the case. I really would, that everything we said about what Alan Moore does and practices and et cetera and so on, I think it equally applies to the people who are working in the genres of male entertainment right now, are doing the same thing. They're just doing it with a larger basis, and they're using technology sort of as the new kind of magic, so to speak. Because where one person, I mean, for all intents and purposes, technology in and of itself is a sort of magic. I mean, if we just showed up 50 years ago, people would be like, "What is that you got?" I mean, a phone that's a computer, a telephone, a camera, a video recorder, a voice recorder, calculations, and you can email, text people, and you can look up anything in the world. They think we were aliens, bro. That's just 50 years ago.
Lawrence?
Yeah.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
A cell phone. If you pulled out a cell phone 100 years ago, they would have called you the new Thomas Edison. If you pulled out a cell phone 400 years ago, they would have burned you at the stake.
Yep.
If you pulled out a cell phone 1,500 years ago, they would worship you as a god.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. That is correct. That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct.
Technology allows someone to reach billions of people at one time, and it's easy to see how that can be seen in the same light as sorcery, magic, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Now, on the flip side of that, you also got to take in consideration, we could be, for each time period that you gave, we kind of could be setting ourselves up because if you go 100 years back, it's not exactly like there's wireless communications to call somebody. if you go 400 years back, they'll look at your phone, but they wouldn't even begin to grasp the concept of picture. The best thing you can do with them is take a photograph or a video recording with audio and play them back to themselves.
But that was why I said, if you pulled out a cell phone 100 years ago, they'd call you another Thomas Edison. If you pulled out a cell phone 400 years ago, they'd burn you at the stake for being a witch. 1,500 years ago, they'd worship you as a god.
Yeah, because the burning at the witch thing, man, that they would have got you that just for
Salem,
recording somebody. I'm
Right.
seriously. I
Salem
mean,
witch trials,
no,
boy.
if you pull out your phone and you record somebody and play it back to them, they'll swear you stole their soul.
Yeah, yeah, they would call you a witch.
Mm-hmm.
They would
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
burn you at the stake. And it's so funny because oh God, help me out here, Lawrence. Was it Asimov who said any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic?
Yeah, that was Isaac Asimov. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
I'm glad y'all brought up about technology because I think this also ties into state of male entertainment. Now, I'm glad y'all brought up as far as like 100 years ago, 400 years ago in that time frame. If you think about this, say 100 years ago, people were restricted to their area of society, or you could say whatever region they were located around the world, that was their means of how the world is to them.
Yeah, that was their
You know,
world.
very few was able to travel beyond those boundaries to go meet with other people or check to see if there was any other life outside of what they know. But as you slowly start to see technology over the years really progress human connection, now all of a sudden, technology in a way, like you say, is magic, but it's also a form of power. How you utilize it will determine if you're going to be like, say, the elites, or if you're closed-minded at all, you become part of the sheep.
Sigma, I believe I've told you this more than once. My first year of college, my macroeconomics professor said, "Listen, he who controls the dissemination of information controls the masses." And I have never forgotten that. And so now, how has technology changed the dissemination of information? 150 years ago, the newspaper was king.
Yep.
Nikola Tesla invents the radio becomes king. David Sarnoff didn't create, but he brought us the television. The television became king. Now the internet is king. He who controls the dissemination of information controls the world. Now, one last thing. Look at your news feed. We now have the 24-hour news cycle. Every news story comes out for 7 to 10 days. It is the end. It is the end all of reality. At the end of 7 to 10 days, another new news story comes out, and that becomes the end all be all of all reality. And that previous story, it's like it never happened.
And
Think about
Right.
that.
And we haven't even gotten to what's coming with the whole metaverse thing.
and
Right. And that's what I was getting
Bingo.
at. So right after the internet came through, and that was a game changer, look at currently right now with social media. Now, there used to be a point where even with, say, the internet, you know, a network can give out information, but you had to make that legwork of, okay, is this information concrete, or are there other information out there that gives alternative views or give a different aspect? Now with social media, you know, if something's happened, say in Florida, that's, you know, being talked about in the news, I could go straight to Lawrence, you know, just through phone, be like, hey, what's it like down there as far as what's going on? You're now are able to get firsthand information that really helps to decide, hey, is this information legit of what they're saying on the main network, or is there something completely different going on?
Was
my
he?
bad.
No, you go first, Eisen. I'm sorry,
Okay.
because I want to comment on that, but you go first. I'm sorry.
Okay, I wanted to take it up a notch, and now because of technology, and we were speaking earlier on relevance. With relevance, you have celebrities, and because of technology and relevance, celebrities are now gods.
Which
Yep,
is
that's
exactly
that's
what
correct.
Alan
Now
Moore
now
was
now
talking about.
now
That
Yeah,
was what Alan Moore was talking about.
yeah.
The
So
superheroes
hold,
were the
hold on,
allegory for
hold on one
that.
second. Hold on one second, Logic. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Because I want to say this real quick because I think it's important. Um, well, what you said a moment ago, Sigma, about being able to call me about something in Florida as opposed to what you're seeing. I think the biggest problem, or at least one of the biggest problems with media nowadays, is that it's no longer interested in telling the truth from an objective position.
Mm.
Nowadays, news is done from a personal commentary point of view. It's like reading an editor's page. The
Hmm.
facts are irrelevant. It's about how the person feels when they're telling the story and their interpretation of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Very
yeah, I can
true.
see that. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Logic. Go ahead.
No, I just want all I said was very true. What Eisen, you said, that's what Alan Moore was saying. Alan Moore was saying, don't deify don't deify the people who don't pedestalize and don't deify our heroes. The real world heroes are politicians, athletes, and entertainers and wealthy people. That is exactly what has happened. He was making a social commentary. Social commentary is extremely difficult to make because, as the old saying goes, if you're going to tell people the truth, make them laugh, or else they will want to kill you. So he used the allegory of the superhero, and he did it so well, people focused on the allegory and they missed the social commentary. So, exactly what you said has come true, that
Which
That
br-
athletes,
which br-
entertainers,
which br-
politicians, and wealthy have been pedestalized and deified.
right, and of course, by doing it that way, it saves himself from cancellation.
Yeah.
Which if he had said anything otherwise, that's what would have happened. I mean,
That's
we got to
that's
be
the
honest.
point.
That's what would have happened.
And just basically off what you just said, which is why I'm so glad and I enjoy the intro that Sigma has created for me because it sums that up just like that perfectly.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
know, I want to add on to something here because there's a story. I have listen. I don't have what is it? Photographic memory. I don't, but I remember things that I hear or see or that I think are important and that no one talks about ever again. Pizzagate being one, but I digress.
Oh, geez, I remember that.
I remember that
I,
one.
re-
Well,
I
but
remember
it's
that.
it's been proven true. It has been proven true. Anyway, the story that I'm talking about specifically, one of the technology officers for Facebook unveiled a project that they were working on. It was wearable, semi-implantable into your body, and it
Yeah, that
would
was the Asian
connect
guy.
yes, it would connect your thoughts to technology around you. You could open and close and unlock doors and locks, turn on and off switches, and you could even access the internet and use
Yeah,
keyboards and go online. The implications are scary. And this
very
is
much.
real world technology from 2017, 2018, if I do recall. But that
Yeah,
story was buried the same way Pizzagate was buried.
yeah. That was. I remember that. That was the small Asian dude. I remember him doing an interview. I can't remember where it was, but dude, that's the game plan now. Transhumanism. That's the
Yes,
game.
it
That's the game
is.
plan.
Well,
It
it's
is.
something you both mentioned because I was reading an article last year where a team of scientists over in Japan have actually created a machine that can now take your dreams and make it into an image. Like you could literally see a person's dreams being played out through this sort of imagery.
So so what is the next logical step? The movie Inception, where people can
Mm.
enter your dreams and take your secrets.
Yeah, actually, it's going to be a combination. It's going to be a combination Inception and Matrix. Count on it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Count
yeah.
Absolutely.
count on it.
Most
Count on
Count
it.
definitely.
on it.
Most
It's
Count
gonna
on
be
it.
definitely.
it's gonna be a combination from the Matrix aspect of keeping everybody subdued in that
Hmm.
respect, and
Hmm.
Inception, like I said, just going in taking secrets. I mean, it's
Also,
gonna be a combination of both.
Also, there was a film. I don't want to call it a flop. Maybe it was small. I never even heard of it. I saw it on cable. It starred Bruce Willis, and it was called Surrogates.
I know. Yeah, surrogates. And there's another one too, because before Keanu Reeves did Matrix, you need to go
Mhm.
check out Johnny Mnemonic.
I remembered. I remembered. Oh, excuse me. I
Ah,
remember Johnny Mnemonic. So
Hmm.
the film Surrogates, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's in the near future, 20 to 50 years ahead of where we are now. And the entire world has androids, and these androids are physically perfect. They're beautiful. Everyone looks like a bodybuilder or a hot chick, whatever. But they're androids, but they're controlled by you. So you stay in your house and you virtually control this android. Everything they see, they do, they feel, you experience it. So no one leaves their homes at all. Everybody's fat and long hair and long nails and they smell and they don't leave the home. You're through your surrogate. Your surrogate goes to work. They do everything. The entire world functions like that.
Yeah.
That's the basic premise. So the 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 point is we're moving toward that reality, and that should
Yeah.
scare you because anything that can connect humans with technology that closely, there's always the room for manipulation. Going back
Oh
to
yeah.
what Eisen said about those who do have the ego and who want to control others.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you, there's gonna be a word. It hasn't been said in a long time, but any science fiction fan will recognize it, and I guarantee you, in the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see that word, and it's gonna be Tannhauser. I guarantee you. I
mm.
guarantee you.
You dug
So
down deep for that one.
that kind of begs the question then, because this kind of still ties into male entertainment. So with the advancement of these new technologies that really is going to it some would say would advance human life, others would say is a deterrent and everything. So my question then is this now, I would say, a bat signal for men who see where the future is going and can take advantage to the point to where they are now not only above average as far as men all around the world, but you can say almost on the level of the elites, if not in elite. Like, are we going to start seeing separations where a lot of men are going to get left behind because they could not take advantage of this new advancement of technology?
You
Well,
know what?
men were already left behind anyway. I mean, not to be rude, but if you look at the vast majority of men who aren't in who aren't in relationships, not those of us who do it by choice, but I mean, men,
Right.
involuntarily. I mean, just the history of the world. Only 40% of men have propagated throughout the entirety of history to begin with.
Mm.
So there's always been men left behind. I think that's not going to change. What I think is going to change is that it's going to get a lot larger percentage wise. So where 60% of men are generally left behind, you're probably going to start seeing between 80 and 90 now. Once all this kicks in, because nobody has the monetary capability to keep up with that type of stuff. Because these things are going to cost money. Make no mistake. And generally speaking, there's only a certain percentage of men who has that kind of financial income available to them.
Lawrence largely stole my thunder, but I say thank you, sir, because great minds do think alike. What I was gonna say, Sigma, you can kind
Mm,
of answer your own question. How is that any different from the entirety of human history?
that's
Mhm.
true. And in fact, okay, I'm gonna say something that is going to be controversial, but being that we're all men here and this is state of male entertainment, I think is part of that rationale. And of course, this is just my opinion, but I definitely like to get you guys' opinions and even those in the chat. I believe that the advancement of sex dolls is kind of a peaceful means of depopulation of the male species on Earth. What I mean by that is, and Lawrence and Logic, definitely you can relate to this from an older perspective. History has shown that if you want to depopulate a nation or just the globe in general, you either do it by natural catastrophes like disease, storms, or whatnot, or you do it by man-made events like wars. I believe that sex dolls are kind of that man-made form in a peaceful way of depopulating the male species so that no bloodshed is given and no one technically is dying off or has died, but you're kind of like leading those type of men away from the gene pool.
Well, it is, but it's believe it is, but believe it or not, it's only one small portion of that working. See, the 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 sex dolls fulfill two functions. The first one is what you said about depopulation to some degree, because if nobody's procreating, then of course that's what happens.
Right.
The second part is that it also is an attempt to decrease violence of a sexual nature because there's an outlet for men now, so to speak. If you catch
Yeah.
if you catch what I'm saying. But like I
Right.
said, that's only one part of it because there's multiple pieces moving here. There's the sex doll aspect, there's the abortion rate aspect, and there's the gender war between men and women, and all of this is contributing as a whole to the depopulation. We're talking
Mhm.
about the vast majority of nations on this planet that have dropped so far below, even if everybody had babies right now today, it couldn't fix it.
Right.
If I can add on to what Lawrence was saying, to his most recent point, um, first off, what you were saying about a more peaceful solution, because I want to say it was the Persian Empire that first came up with it. After you conquer a nation, you either make all the men slaves, or you conscript them, or you kill them. You impregnate the women, and then you replace their language and religion with with yours. With all of that said, um, see it partly of the depopulation thing, but I see it more of a case of um, population control by creating a group of men who are now more docile, as Lauren said, but they're more easily controlled. Now, here's the thing about when you say depopulation, when men don't procreate, remember, unless we're talking in vitro, you also have less women also. So it's not about replacing men or depopulating men, it's about depopulating humans in general. So
Mm.
it all comes to a part. Yes, feminists would like to say that it's about getting rid of men and you're depopulating men. But men impregnate women. Women give birth to men and women. If they're not having sex, then there's less women and men. So
Right.
it works. It's all a part, reducing numbers, also creating people who are more docile. Also, again, stories that don't get talked about and people forget about. Prince
Right.
Philip, 50 years ago, said that Africa was overpopulated, and nobody talked about that. 30
Hmm.
years ago, Prince Philip said the entire world was overpopulated. No one
Hmm.
talks about that. When his grandson, whichever of the two, William, whatever, said the same thing. Someone
Hmm.
in the news speaks about it, but they mostly ignore it. You need to pay attention when people in these positions keep reiterating the fact that they
Yep.
think the world is overpopulated,
Yep.
because these people have influence and they have power.
Yep. And you also the two other things you have to take in consideration about that relationship for depopulation. You
Mhm.
also have the interest, and this is something I talk about anybody who knows me about growing your own food, because the type of
Mhm.
food that you're being fed has changed the dynamic of men with testosterone. We're predominantly estrogen now. I mean, they've done a couple of surveys where this is the lowest level of testosterone any generation has had in the history of this country. In addition to that, going all the way back, for those men that did stick around, whoever came in after taking their women, whatever men they wanted to keep, you got to remember they castrated them to make them eunuchs.
Yep.
So you've got you've got that kind of stuff going on too. But in the full scheme of things, like I said, I think I'm with Logic. I mean, the entire game plan is about population control. Now, don't get me wrong, depopulation is part of that, but the overall concept is population control without doubt.
Absolutely.
And that's
Right.
not that's not a national thing. That's a world thing.
That's a global thing because every government that has existed on the face of this planet, their number one priority is maintaining power, staying in power. The
Right.
protection of the people is further below on that level, and people refuse to accept that. Whether we're talking the United States government, the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the kingdoms all across Africa, Europe, anywhere, whether it's a
Hmm.
king, a pharaoh, a potentate, a shah, an imam, a president, or a prime minister, or a chancellor. Their
Right.
number one priority is staying in office or maintaining power. Your leader, whatever country you are, 10,000 years ago or right now, they will kill you. They will kill their own citizens in their bed if it keeps them in power.
And
And
keep this in mind. Yeah.
that truth is so powerful, people will kill you before they accept that truth.
Right. And keep in mind with what Logic is saying. There's caveats that you can add on to that as well. A prime example: every nation does exactly what he says, but at the same time, keep in mind that every person who's in power in a nation has already delegated who the bad guy is going to be in that nation, so that when push comes to shove and they have to start affecting everything, it's easy to turn people of the nation against those people. You saw it in Germany with the Jews.
Oh,
You see there's certain nations with certain classes of people, rural versus city. You see it with black people, et cetera, and so on. Hell, you even see it with white trash. So every nation has a particular group that they've specifically chosen to be the target to bring everybody together to go against. So those are generally the first ones that they go after when that kind of stuff happens.
And
oh,
that is an excellent point. All I can do is add to it. The late 1800s, for the first time, saw the rise and the creation of the, for lack of a better term, the global boogeyman. So in the 1890s, it was the quote unquote ironmongers, the warmongers.
Hmm.
There were skirmishes all across Europe by
Right.
people who were supplying weapons to either side of every conflict. In World War One, it was the German Empire. World War Two, it was Nazi Germany. Then it was the Reds, the commies.
Hmm.
After the commies, it's become who? The War on Terror. After the War on Terror, it's currently who? China. Some saying it's Russia again. So we so it every nation has that group that Lauren spoke about brilliantly. But it's funny
Hmm.
how in the late 1890s, for the first time in human history, now we have a global boogeyman. There always has to be a global boogeyman. And the funny
Right.
thing is, if you actually do the research and cut through all the Hollywood BS and all the US propaganda BS, even the Russian or Soviet Union propaganda BS, the Soviet Union was never actually a viable military threat against America except for the nukes.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. And again, even with all the global, even with the global boogeyman, even while that's going on, each nation state still has its own internal boogeyman.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, prime
Excellent point.
example prime example, you would see it shift. As a matter of fact, the prime example I can give is America. You could see it shift. Without doubt, black people were first, but black people were predominantly used for a lot of work and labor. But then it moved from them to focusing on Native Americans. When it was done with Native Americans, it came back to blacks. Then it left
No,
blacks,
no,
and it
no.
went
It
and it
came
went and
back.
it,
Came back to Irish.
no. Irish. That's I'm getting to that. Irish came after because what it did is that it went from black to Native American, and then after Native American back to black. Then it went from black and it went to, if I remember correctly, Asian during the
Yep.
railroad period.
Yep.
Then after the Asians, it went back to black, and then after black, it went to the Irish, and then they set the Irish and the black off against each other.
And then
So
came
so
the
and then they went back to
Italianos.
black. So yeah, exactly. And then it went to Latinos or Mexicans or whatever, and then from there right back to black. So like I said, even with the global boogeyman, every nation is still going to have its system. Because if you look at Germany during World War II, first it was Jews, then it went to Gypsies, then it went back to Jews.
hmm
Then it went to the undesirables like handicapped, mentally, yada yada. Then it went back to the Jews. So every nation has it. But I
hmm
mean, even with Serbia and I mean, even within religious organizations, Sikhs versus everybody. Yeah, it's just what they do. It's just this way
Um,
it's always been.
I was going to say that I really don't see the whole doll thing really happening like that and taking out. No, I'm not.
Well,
Um,
that depends because Turtling and Monkey will tell you different.
well, I mean,
Well,
here's the reason why.
but
I
that's a
mean, when
good
they
thing,
when they
Isaac.
were bringing it in, women voted it down because the dolls couldn't tell men no.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no, no, no,
yeah.
no,
Yeah,
no,
it's
no,
true.
no.
It's
I'm
true. They
serious.
did do
Yes,
that.
yes,
They
yes,
did.
yes.
Yeah, they did
No.
do that. They did.
So yeah, it's not going to happen. And the other thing too, the other point I want to bring around, society in general is created to curb males.
True.
Yeah.
Society. That's why when people talk about alpha and beta, it's pointless when you're talking about it in a societal standpoint because the very notion of society is a beta construct in creation. Um, so betas could govern over everyone
Yeah, yeah.
and,
I,
and
s-
divvy up.
A week, yeah,
I slightly
a week
disagree
King
though.
came
I
up with it. I'm
slightly
sure.
disagree. I don't think society is beta was designed to curb males. The purpose of society is to restrain the more violent aspects of the male's nature. So that's
Well, I think.
beta. That's elevation of thinking.
Watch this
Well,
logic. No, watch this logic. Because alpha had always been about who done what to be the biggest dog in the park.
I
The
un,
betas could not because the beta could not be that. They had to find another way to beat him.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. However, that's somewhat simplistic because if we don't curb in the more unrestrained and violent aspects of our male nature, it would be difficult to advance as a people socially and especially technologically. We have to work together and we have to conduct and comport ourselves differently.
I
If
get what you're
not,
saying.
we maintain feudal societies and we're killing each other over the most trivial of things. So I get what
so
you're saying.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but it's much deeper in nuance than just alpha versus beta. It's
I don't think so. I think that
Right.
human beings are
Well,
relatively simple. But my bad,
well,
Sid.
well. No, I was actually going to touch more so, Isaac, what you're saying, because I think what Eisen was trying to point out is, okay, look at masculinity in its raw form when it's not refined and all. It really can be interpreted as terror. I mean, if you were to go, to the hunter-gatherer days,
Mm-hmm.
a man could easily kill a woman, let alone another man at will, if he is that dominant creature. So what end up happening as far as civilizations and groups, you had males who may not have been dominant physically, but they had the mental capabilities of going beyond their boundaries per se. And so what Eisen was getting at is these particular males who weren't dominant physically, they got together and say, hey, let's build a system to where everybody benefit, not just one particular strong, male who, so to speak, can beat everybody to a pulp. And that's where, like you said, Logic, it curved that raw masculinity of men. Because now,
not the raw masculinity, the most violent of our aspects.
The most basic.
It's who we are. Yes.
The most basic.
Right. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that even with that being said, the alphas signed off on it readily. That's why you would that's why you would have Caesar in charge, but his most important person on his right hand would be the architects who built memorials to him, or built bridges, or coliseums. I mean even the alpha understood that there's something to be said about intellect over brawn.
Exactly.
That's why they would keep the guys who designed weapons, or who made a better chariot, or who knew how to train horses, yada yada yada. They had their functions, and as a reward to them for appeasing Caesar or the emperor or whoever it is, they were allowed to have certain alpha gifts that normally wouldn't go to a beta per se. So he would give them a pick of their women, he'd give them land, and then those dudes would start emulating alphas in the sense of who they're overseeing on what they have now.
I guess what I'm saying is that just because someone was king didn't necessarily make them an alpha.
True. That's true. That's very true.
Now, that's like when I look at Solomon and David. I don't see Solomon as alpha. David was
not
alpha.
He is not. Yeah, David was alpha big time.
So
David was alpha
because of he done alpha things. So that's where I'm getting at, that just because someone is a ruler, you can be successful, but it doesn't mean you're alpha.
Yeah, but
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I was just using that as an example about how they co-signed off on it. That's all I was doing.
But I would go somewhat slightly sideways with that. Just because you're not out killing lions and beating everyone up with your hands 24/7 doesn't make you beta by the same token. See, at some point, not this particular discussion per se, but the current cultural zeitgeist has gotten to the point where if you're alpha, you're killing lions or killing the enemy, and if you're not, you're just beta. That's it. And that's not the case. Every alpha is not out killing lions and breaking rock with his bare hands.
Well, and I agree with that logic. I do, but in the context of what we were talking about, that is what the foundation was.
Natural law.
Anybody who became king, Caesar, emperor, whatever, he was required to go out and conquer.
True.
Because that's how he built his legacy.
Until it became a birthright and they were born into it. So that's what I'm getting at, is that
even they had to
basic natural law, alpha and beta was about that.
Yeah. But even if they were born into it,
I'm not saying it's right, but it was.
But even if they were born into it, they still had a requirement to go out and conquer land. Like I said, that's how they made a name. That's how their legacy became what it is. Even if they were born into it, the only person who did exactly the opposite of that and took the soft way out was Solomon. Instead of actually going out to conquer, he just went and married the daughters.
I would say also Saul was very diplomatic about how he did things. He only
but being diplomatic doesn't make you beta.
You can't tell me when the way he came at David wasn't beta.
It's not.
Well, no, that's different. Yeah, he did. That was beta.
But here's the point that I am making.
Mm-hmm.
It's not black or white. We live in a gray reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because you don't do one or two specific things does not mean you are beta. I mean, you are not alpha. It doesn't work that way. And when we reduce everything to the most simplest, basic black and white terms, we fall into problems. And that is where that is one of the greatest gifts society has given us, the ability to elevate our thinking. Because everything is not okay. If you're either killing lions or you're not. If you're not killing lions, you're a beta. That thinking is it's for lack of a better term, it's incorrect because everything is not that black or white. You cannot everything cannot be reduced to those simple terms of binary thinking.
No, I don't disagree with you. Everything has nuance, everything. But I
Because
think,
also
but I think in the context of what of the point Eisen was making, I think, and I could be wrong, that you might be overthinking it.
no,
But I do agree with you. Everything has nuance. Everything has nuance because even
also
if you take away the parts that Eisen was talking, like using Solomon
What?
as an example, even if you take away the bits and pieces Eisen was talking about, you could still look over everything else he's done afterwards and still make the case that he was beta.
What I'm I
Yeah.
think
So
the underlying thing of what I was getting is that human beings change definitions and words of things over time to make themselves feel better and more important.
that's true. That is very
well
true. That is
that
very true.
that is very true.
And that's
But
the evolution of language, though.
and
Yes.
also I think that as an unfortunate consequence of our civility or society, sometimes because here's that whole gray thing, sometimes the most intellectual who some would class the most intellectual who don't who aren't physically inclined for
Hmm.
lack of a better term can sometimes push society away from the more masculine parts. Basically, there's a reason why that saying is hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men.
Yeah.
Weak
Yeah.
men create bad times. Those bad
Yeah.
times in turn create strong men. And that
Circle of
I
life.
I think that that cycle is a consequence of as society advances, the more the intellectualism starts to replace too much of our more basic masculine nature gets suppressed and suppressed and suppressed to the point where you have woke mob garbage. So
And
Well,
and
yeah,
to that
and I'm sorry. Go ahead, Isaac.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
gonna say, and to that point, what happens in when you have society is that men tend to forget that what men tend to think that their fight with nature is over when it never is because the nature that you're fighting now is human nature when
Well,
you
yeah,
create cities.
right, but the thing about that, and bringing it back to the male entertainment aspect,
Hmm.
that's one of the biggest problems because we've gotten to the point where we've let the intellectuals or the intellectual part of society start making the decisions.
mm,
And that's never a good thing. The same way it's never a good thing to let the guys who are all alpha be the one leading the way.
I
Because
wouldn't
see,
even.
because the way I look at it is, if the alpha is the one who's always leading the way, we're always going to be at war.
exactly.
If we have the intellectual who's always leading the way, we're always going to be unprepared for war because
Bingo.
it's overthinking everything. So
Yes.
there's always had to be a balance. That's why it was
Mhm.
always so important that who was in a leader position always surrounded himself by good counsel. And it doesn't make a difference what path you follow, whether it be secular, whether it be moralistically, ethically,
Hmm.
whether it be Christianity or non-Christianity, they all say the same thing. Surround yourself with good counsel.
Because
That's why we have so many stories and mythology based around that, whether it be the Olympian god surrounding Zeus, whether it be the round table surrounding Arthur. There's reason for these stories and the allegories of them. It's supposed to teach us that. But what we have right now in the state of male entertainment is that the intellectuals are in control and they're demasculating the characters that we need because those characters teaches us the foundations of what it is to be not just a man but a good man, a moral man, an ethical man, a man who protects others. You know, heroes have their place and position the same way the villains have the place and position. Because something's wrong when today, in today's society, we find ourselves more in tune with the villains than we do the heroes. That's saying something.
Well, I think what it's saying is
That's saying something for society.
Yeah,
For real,
yeah.
for real.
Well, you know, I think the thing is that on that topic about with the villains is, to be honest, we're not just picking any villain.
That's true.
We're actually in line with villains who had actual points that, they were exactly wrong.
Yeah, but the same thing could be said. We don't just pick heroes either.
Right.
I mean,
agree.
for me, it's Batman, not the Creeper. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we don't just pick heroes either. I mean, every hero that we choose has a fundamental, I mean, literally a fundamental aspect of who we are, both mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Even if we can't match it physically, we align with it in every other capacity. What Batman means to me is there are no
Different
words
than somebody
for it.
else. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's no words for it, and it is different than somebody else. But what Batman means to me would be what it would mean to somebody else who it was Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, or John Stewart. It means we
Or
literally
Superman. Yeah.
exactly we literally are our characters. I mean, whether we want to admit that or not, the characters we pick as our heroes. And like I said, there's something inherently wrong when we've reached a point that instead of relating to Batman, I can relate to Thanos.
Well, look at this.
Something's wrong with that picture.
Look at this. We can't be the I get and I understand the whole thing about male, masculine, driven. The thing is, if we don't curve in the more violent and more aggressive sides of our nature, we will return to feudal societies. And feudal societies were brutal, and we don't want to return to that. Especially,
But see that right there, what you said, that's the point. That's why them emasculating and tearing down those male heroes is a bad idea. Because once you do that, you return to the very thing you were talking about cannot be, and that's what we're gonna get.
And that's the interesting thing. So, you know, I'm of the opinion, again, only an opinion, totally subjective. I'm of the opinion that there has to be a balance, but I think that the balance can't be static. It has to constantly shift to be more masculine and aggressive and violent nature, and then shift back over to more cerebral and thoughtful. That balance has to constantly shift. It cannot stay in the middle static. It has to shift. But if it goes to either extreme, that's bad. Unfortunately, I think that we're closer to the intellectual extreme than what we should be.
That's correct. That's correct. And I'll tell you something else too. And there's two or three things to what you just said. The aspect is that alpha and beta relationship is imperative for a good society, because where the alpha goes out and builds the society, fights for the society and protects the society, that beta's position is to make sure that society runs internally properly. It's like the esoteric aspect of Excalibur and what it represents when it's sheathed and when it's unsheathed. You understand what I'm saying? And then on top of that, in order to get the beta and alpha aspect to balance properly, I can tell you what's disrupting that balance, and it's the feminine.
Well, actually, I would argue that the fact that males can't see that they are the counterbalance, and to think that you're going to be able to what am I looking here for? That someone is going to willingly come under your law is foolish.
Well, it's not just about that, and I'm sure Logic can testify to this. When we were growing up, we knew beta men. Our beta men growing up were not this feminine. They were still men. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They were still men.
I get what you're saying, but that feminine led to what's now.
I want
And then
to end.
that's the point I made. That's what's stopping the beta and the alpha from working together. That feminine energy. Now, whether it's been implanted or they chose to pick that up themselves is irrelevant. But that's what's throwing everything off. Because let me tell you something. When I was growing up, Sammy Davis Jr. is not an alpha. He's not. But he didn't act feminine. I could tell you that.
I want to interject something here. To add on to what Lawrence said. He and I are from the same age group, from the same city. Come to find out, originally, we're cut from a different cloth. And that cloth says several things. Whether they're right or wrong, it's the world that we come from or came from. Men don't wear pink. Men don't wear skin tight clothes. You don't wear skinny jeans. You don't wear all this swag crap. You're not pretty. You don't have hairstyles with a freaking spider on top of your head. You act like a man. You're masculine. You don't argue and go on and on and back and forth. If we disagree, we're either going to come to a resolution, or we're going to shoot a fair one, which means a fight, or we're going to go our separate ways, but we're going to resolve this. Period. End discussion. Done. A lot of this nonsense would not fly. When I see a lot of what goes on, listen, I'm not the old guy saying, hey, you kids, get off my lawn. The world has changed. I get that. I understand that. But also know this. I'm cut from a different cloth. A lot of things that a lot of these 35s and unders go through, to me, they're soft. And I don't want to use that F word, but you're effed out. Like, what?
Let me ask you a question,
What's
Logic.
the matter with you?
Let me ask you a question, Logic. Let me just keep it real. Because like I said, we from the same place and the same. Look, dude. Imagine somebody walking into your school or walking up to you in college and talking about you a metrosexual. What's gonna happen?
Dude. Hey, hold on. Look, now watch this. Now this is where I gotta go, because we can't act like y'all didn't have them weird people in y'all time.
We did.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yes, we did. We did.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Y'all were cut from a different cloth of that time as well.
Right, but
I'm saying y'all are not the norm.
Here's the thing, Eisen. Here's the thing. You kept that to yourself. You kept it under wraps. You would not see kids in junior high school or high school openly gay. That did not happen. Period. End of discussion. Whether it's
I had one. I had one in high school. Yeah,
if you were openly gay, you were getting jumped every day.
And watch this.
In a discussion. Again, whether right or wrong, mostly wrong, and I can admit that now. We didn't tolerate that, and it didn't happen. And all this purple hair and pink hair and living your truth and all that nonsense. All I'm going to say is this: cut from a different cloth, come from a different time.
Now we did not. Now don't get me wrong. We don't get me wrong. We did have a few who stuck out. They were exceptions because like as far as it goes for the trans community, we had Sylvester. We had drag queens and strip shows on 42nd Street for that. We had Stonewall in the 70s. So I mean, we had that stuff. It's just that none of them walked up to us straight men and told us we have to date them. We have to wear a skirt.
It has exploded now.
And all I'm saying is, look, Prince came from y'all generation with them assless chaps.
Yes, he
that got promoted, and older Negroes will still now say that just because he got a lot of women, it ain't Skittle. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
That's true. All I'm saying. That is true.
Okay.
True.
All right. So, go ahead, Logic.
All I was going to say is I can appreciate that, but he is still one of the best musicians who has ever done it.
And an exception.
And an exception. And also, it has exploded now. The world the world that's living now, it has exploded. We had Sylvester, we had Elton John, we had Prince. Now it's everyone everywhere. It has exploded. To make the argument, well, you guys had this in the 70s and 80s. No, we didn't. We had a few pieces of pepper up in the pot. Now,
and I'll tell you something else. And I'll tell you something else too. And I'll tell you something, and I'll make it real quick because I know Stephen is ready to go. Yeah. And I'll tell you this real quick. regardless of Prince Sylvester, one thing cannot be denied: they carried themselves differently than the ones today.
Bingo.
That's true.
Yeah,
And
I
they
won't argue
also
that.
did
I was
not
just
tell
making.
you that you have to change who you are for them. They did not tell you that you have to remake the world to make them happy.
And Sylvester would never walk into somebody's house or school and tell them to put their kids on hormones. He would never do that.
Never do that.
Elton John would never do that.
And they are raging homosexuals. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm not arguing it one bit. All the point I was just making was with each generation, it just got progressively worse. That's the only thing I was getting at.
Agreed. All right, Sigma. Let's look at go
All
down.
righty, gentlemen. Yeah, because we now come up on the hour and everything. So definitely like to thank everybody that was listening in, those listening on the replay, and definitely you gentlemen that have this panel and all. So our schedule for next month, there won't be a State of Male Entertainment for November because yours truly will be in Japan. So I won't be able to do this stream while over in another country. I would love to, but that's carrying a lot of equipment and everything. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. Plus, Miss Kagome would not be happy that I travel over to her country and still streaming
to do work.
Yeah.
Wait, time out. God forbid you actually spend time with your other half. Oh my God, that makes you a simp.
I was just gonna say, God forbid that you have some fun for yourself, but hey,
look, brother's just trying to find out if she got some sisters.
Right on. So yeah, we will definitely carry this over into December because definitely, this was State Male of Entertainment. It is a great discussion and all like tonight. So yeah, definitely that's going on. Meanwhile, I will like to remind folks that this month's villain of the month is General Zod. So for those who want to tune into that, be sure to be there on October 30th as we will be talking about General Zod and how we think of his philosophies and whatnot, which, after doing some research right now, he definitely got some very interesting topics about life. But I want to save that for that stream. But anyway, everybody, thank you for listening in. Really appreciate it and whatnot. Until next time.